McDonald's employees. What secrets of the golden arches did you discover there? My first day on the job, I was told to be on the lookout for the elderly gentleman who'd try to sneak around the corner and pour the entire coffee pot into his mug while everyone was too busy to stop him. I caught him in the act almost immediately. Sauces for sandwiches have the craziest dispensers. Ketchup and mustard are in these really rudimentary plastic funnel things that have a paddle in the handle, and when you squeeze it, gravity pushes the right amount of sauce through the holes. It doesn't seem like it would work well, does it? But it does if you apply the proper amount of jiggling. The mac sauce, mayo, and tartar, though, they're basically in cork tubes that get loaded into basically cork guns. You pull the trigger on the handle and a really satisfying ratchety clanking delivers a powerfully saucy surprise for the awaiting buns. Problem is, though, it takes a bit of finesse because if you hit that trigger too hard, you'll blow the bun and a wad of cream right through the condiment station and onto the wall 8 feet away. No joke, the first couple of tartar splurts on a fresh tube came out so hot, I'd fire a shot or two in the trash to avoid premature splatulation of the lunch rush. The first salvo, properly elevated and adjusted for the wind, could clear the whole kitchen and take out the McInfantry on the cash register. Depending on which one you work at, the parking lot is basically a meetup for addicts and dealers and, at least where I was in New Mexico, for people to meet up and do the deed in their cars. As long as they kept their business to the middle of the night and didn't cause any serious problems, we were told to not call the cops or make a fuss. Mostly because they'd come in and buy their food after their shenanigans. Soda and mini pies were really popular with the smack addicts. What I later found out was that management was actually told to let it slide by corporate, since everyone higher up was aware of how much money the night crowd bought in. I got to see many deals go down. I'm convinced that I saw at least one arms deal, but of course I'd have no way of verifying that. If you drop any unopened chicken nugget sauce on the ground once, you've got yourself a sauce grenade. Trash compactor can make for some fun explosions too. We had a Volpack of ketchup that needed to be tossed for whatever reason, and somebody didn't realize that that shouldn't go into the compactor. I got back after hearing a bang and a scream. The guy is just caked in ketchup, and it shot up out of the barrel of the manual compactor and painted the wall, ceiling, and bun rack. They have since taken away the Volpacks. For all that I'd never go back to working at that place ever again, I've got to say that these days I really appreciate how precision some of the equipment and supplies were. The sauce guns, the flawlessly packed custom patties and deep fryables, and the compactor. God, I miss crushing things and occasionally getting fun surprises like this. Industrial equipment is cool, folks. Worked there in high school. I found out that if you put the middle of a Big Mac bun in the fryer and then add soft serve and strawberry topping, it tastes just like a funnel cake. Custom creations were the best part of working there. Cheeseburger bun, fried, add the chai latte powder. You got yourself a cinnamon donut, my friend. Former employee here, I found out when making 5 gallons of sweet tea that an entire 4-pound bag of sugar goes in. Sandwiches with a round egg use real cracked eggs. Folded and scrambled come from packaged goods in the freezer or fridge. I also had a manager that insisted more people purchase filet-o-fish when it's raining because they subconsciously associate the watery weather with fish. Anyway, he did some research by pouring through sales of filet-o-fish for months and comparing it to weather data for each day. Turns out he found something like a 3% increase on rainy days and was very pleased with himself. The manager voiced his theory one day and the crews all argued with him about it. This went on for a while. He was committed to proving us wrong, so he secretly pulled the sales numbers at work and did the rest on his own time, never breathing a word until he brought his printed report in to shut us all up. He did separate Fridays during Lent and compared those days to each other in anticipation of having holes poked in his research. We still did that anyway, of course. As pointless and imperfect as the research was, it was impressive to see his commitment to giving us the middle finger. My manager used to be on my back all the time for giving out too much sauce. He tried telling me the limit is 1 per meal. I'm based in the UK. Our portions are generally smaller here, but I'd still give out as many sauces as possible, because screw being stingy. The official deodorizing spray, which you use on the bathrooms or the ball pit to make them smell better. It was the most pleasant thing that I've ever smelled in my entire life. Even now, I wish I could smell it again. I learned that if I have time to lean, I have time to clean. You got time to text, you got time to Windex. You got time to flop, you've got time to mop. I know that the second 2 phrases are people joking around, but whoever coined that first phrase has a special spot reserved in hell. Cool story. I worked there in my teens for a couple of years. Actually worked at 2 different locations, so I saw the difference in standards. At one store, there was a guy who always rode his bike to the store every single day to hang out. He was on the spectrum, slow, and McDonald's was his kind of castle. Everybody knew him, and he got a lot of free food from the employees. He was a daily part of the shift for us. Anyway, one day he'd had too many root beers. This was a thing he normally did, because he pretended the root beers were real beers and he'd get drunk. Everyone kind of would go along with it because it was funny and he never did anything too wild. Unfortunately, this day he took it a little too far and ended up in the parking lot throwing bottles at cars driving by. So long story short, the guy was arrested and he was banned from that McDonald's for life. I kind of felt bad about it because that McDonald's was his favorite place to be. He'd pull through at 3 or 4 on his bike and stay and hang out with his employees until like 8. Every single day. Before that one bottle incident, one of the managers even made his own little parking spot for his bicycle. He was happy as a clam. I think about that guy sometimes. I hope he's found himself a new McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's when they first introduced sweet tea and remember that it was brewed in a large bucket, mixing hot water with a full bag of granulated sugar. It makes me sick to think about it, but I still sometimes crave that disgustingly sweet, tasty garbage. Dehydrated onions. You put them in a metal thing and you just add water. The thing is, they still taste great, but I was shocked and just happy that I didn't have to go cut onions. Man, reading these, I'm wondering why McDonald's is so boring. We don't spit on anything. The stuff that needed to be kept clean is kept clean, although I'll admit if it wasn't required, it would be filthy. The ice cream worked fine, food wasn't undercooked, on occasion it was overcooked, and employing high school kids, of course they're going to make some mistakes, but there was never anything too bad. My time wasn't bad. We kept it clean and nobody I ever knew of tampered with the food. But there were a lot of funny things that happened, so I have a lot of stories. For example, one day we had 10 minutes to close. It was myself off at close, the grill closer, the service closer, and the manager. Grill closer had on a headset, as he was praying nobody else came in, and he was very low on a few things and didn't want to make more right before closing. The guy prided himself on having things done and being out the door within 10 minutes of closing. The bosses loved him because other closers took up to an hour, and that meant paying them for up to another hour. One good thing to know is that our headsets had 2 buttons. One talked to that other headset only, the other one talked to the outside speaker. He had been playing a game where he was trying to make the service worker laugh while she was taking the orders. So you can probably see where this is going. So a driver pulls up to the speaker. He orders a 20-piece nugget bag. The closer is teed off and pushed the talk to other headset button and goes, "Man, frick that stupid frickin' order. Frick!" Except, of course, he hit the wrong button. Needless to say, somebody got a free 20-piece pack and another free meal in the future, and grill members were banned from wearing headsets for a little while afterwards. I worked at McDonald's Australia. Back when we had the old cheeseburger buns, before McDonald's got healthy, we used to scrunch up the buns and deep fry them in the fry vat. Covered them in sugar, and you'd end up with something a little like a donut. I started working at Mackie D's when I was 15. The secret is that it's probably one of the cleanest restaurants in your city. The standardizations and routine practices leave little room for employees to think for themselves. It's a way cleaner restaurant than the $30 to $50 per person place I'd work at later. True, true, and true. Say what you will about the place, but it's about as sanitary as it's possible to be in the food industry. If you let your standards slip, the chances of you getting away with it for long are next to zero, in case you're working out in Nowhereville, abandoned Bama. I worked in one from 2000 to 2005. During this time, they changed the bacon. The new bacon was not as good. During this time, they changed the shake mix. The new shake mix wasn't as good. The shake machine works fine, so long as someone remembers to fill it before it gets too empty and goes into an automatic 90-minute self-clean mode. It also takes a very long time to start up, so if somebody forgets, there's no shakes for 30 minutes. This was never a problem for me. Whenever I did opening shift, I'd kick off the coffee brewing for my team, then start up the shake machine for myself. The chocolate chip cookies and McGriddles taste amazing if you eat them fresh out of the oven. I always made an extra half tray for myself. Not really a secret, but when I'm on wrap, as in wrapping the food, and I get nuggets, I might slip an extra 2 or 3 in because I like the thought of someone getting hype over an extra nug or 2. The Big Mac is just a double cheeseburger with Thousand Island dressing, lettuce, and an extra piece of bread. If you order a double, add lettuce and Big Mac sauce, you get the same thing with less bread and a cheaper price. Okay, I've been made aware that I was inaccurate in my assessment of Big Mac sauce, and have just checked to make sure. In my defense, 20 years back, I'm old, I am positive it was just Thousand Island dressing. The McDonald's that I worked at kept a very clean kitchen and front line. I worked in restaurants that were privately owned, and the food standards, throwing out old food and cleanliness, just weren't the same. I was very surprised with how much Macca's constantly made us clean. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I worked at McD's in high school. This was in the 90s. The store I worked at had incredibly high standards. I was taught proper customer service skills, how to de-escalate a situation, time management, cleaning skills, people skills, and so much more. I thrived there because I was lacking adult role models anywhere else in my life. My managers made sure I was caught up on my homework, helped me study, made sure I was eating, because even though it was fast food, it was better than no food. I made some of the best friends I've ever had, and I'm still friends with them to this day. I can truthfully say that working there saved my life in high school. McD's has a very thorough training program for managers. I was fast-tracked to management, and at 18 they put me through Hamburger University, the McDonald's training site in Illinois. That was quite an experience. I ended up leaving McD's at 19 to go be a young adult and try new jobs. I don't have any trade secrets to share so much, so I'll just say this. Don't knock the kids or people working fast food. Don't make fun of them or laugh at them or make them feel bad. They're learning valuable skills that will serve them later in life. They're doing what they can to earn money. They're serving you the junk food you want while learning how to grow up to be a successful adult. Sure, not everyone fits that description, but more people do than you think. 10-to-1 burger patties. Every 10-to-1 is 1/10 of a pound of beef. These go in most of the smaller burgers. A McDouble and a Big Mac have the same amount of beef in them. The difference between them is the Mac sauce instead of ketchup and mustard, the middle bun, sesame seeds, and lettuce. The difference between a double cheeseburger and a McDouble is 1 slice of cheese. McRibs are the messiest sandwich we had to make. In addition to cooking it, the McRibs stewed in their sauce in the universal heating cabinet until used. That required a special pair of tongs because it was pork, and cross-contamination applies to religious stuff as well. No matter how careful you were, you always made a mess. Burrito mix came pre-cooked and frozen. You wrapped a slice of cheese with the stuff, and it was put in a queuing oven, which was a glorified microwave until hot. That's it. No real cooking done. Breakfast breads were the easiest back-end position during breakfast. Things just took time. McGriddle buns were baked and frozen, and then thrown into the queuing oven to make them soft. Biscuits were queued and then baked. Bagels and muffins were toasted. McDonald's uses beef fat, if I recall correctly, for their fryers. When the oil was new, it was literally white until it got hot. A patch of sweet tea took 5 pounds of sugar for 5 gallons of tea. You could feel the cavities as you made it. The grilled chicken took the longest to cook and was kind of a pain in the butt. Some of the pieces of chicken could be in the universal heating cabinet for hours before finally being tossed. And that's all I've got for now. I can never forget working breakfast. Those sandwiches need to be cheese, then meat, then egg. If the cheese is next to the egg, it makes the egg slip out. If you want a good replacement for Big Mac sauce, 3 big tablespoons of good quality mayo, about a single good tablespoon of ketchup, 2 teaspoons of gherkin relish, 1 tablespoon or so of pickle juice, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, half to 1 teaspoon of turmeric, mix till thoroughly combined, and leave in the fridge to let the ingredients make friends with one another overnight. I worked at McDonald's in high school for a couple of months before going to Burger King. McDonald's had more stuff to make things faster, like the cool ketchup and mustard dispensers and the fry dispenser. I liked working at both places though. Mostly kids my age, I had a blast making $5.15 an hour. A couple of Mormon missionary guys came in one time and ordered their food. They also ordered French fries with no salt, so the fries had to be fried specially with no salt. They told me it was their tactic to get hot fries. There are 2 sorts of missionaries, the hopeful, fresh-faced, idealistic ones, and the ones who are actually good at converting people, or as I call them, the con artists. Seriously, I've worked in door-to-door sales, and there's very little difference between a good missionary and a good door-to-door salesman. And wouldn't you know it, these con artist missionaries are really good at getting what they want in a variety of situations, including getting hot fries, I guess. At time of writing, there's a glitch in the McDonald's app. There's a deals section, and it usually has a coupon for a free cookie or free apple pie with any order. Add it to your order, and you get the free cookie. Then, the next time you order from the app, just reorder your last meal, and you can add or subtract whatever you want, but the free cookie should still be there. The glitch is that you can add another free cookie from the deals section, and now you have 2 free cookies. Evidently, there's no cap to this. I now get 5 free cookies with each order. I've stopped at 5 because I felt that any more than that would be overkill. and now they'll have killed this by the time it goes on the internet. You know, it's an effed up mess of cogs and gears that still has some effed up way of working, said an ex-worker of McDonald's whom I know. All drinks come in as a syrup and are carbonated on the spot, hence why it can taste flat sometimes. There used to be a way to get a discount code for every second that the timer was running on a coupon, but they patched that in 2017. The ice cream machine at my place usually broke down because people mixed up the milkshake bags with blue caps and the ice cream bags with red caps while filling the machine. Mismanagement is surprisingly common, and corporate doesn't give a single crap as long as there's sufficient profit coming in. You know, I don't have much tea to serve, honestly. I worked there for over a year. Everything's cleaned properly, nobody messes with the food, because there's always a manager nearby. The food is rather fresh. While a lot of the stuff is frozen, that doesn't make it bad. Only thing is, the tea is very easy to screw up. It's easy to accidentally leave the spout open and have tea covering the floor. Once we had a bag of coffee break and it got into the ice, and into the tea too, and we didn't realize right away, so some people got some coffee in their tea. When it comes to allergies, though, everyone I worked with was very diligent. If somebody had a bad allergy to, like, bread, we'd remove our gloves, wash our hands or arms, put on new gloves, and make sure the item was okay. Given that was probably the case because we didn't want a lawsuit. Another secret is how much food McDonald's wastes. We had a bucket to toss the food in, and managers had to count it at the end of the day. It was disgusting to see how much perfectly edible food was being thrown out. Luckily, if your manager was a cool person, you could ask to eat it in the back quickly. This was especially the case with the pies. Frankly, the company was fine. They offered to give you scholarships, paid for you to get your diploma if you didn't have one, always paid above minimum wage, though sometimes barely, and it was easy to get a promotion if you asked and put in the work. That being said, I still hate corporations, and the franchise owners were buttholes who ignored a bunch of stuff. Customers threw their food at me if something was wrong, like not enough salt, and I had minor burns from some of the work. Sometimes I was told I was a massive C-word and I should KMS. The list goes on, and also, you're not allowed to take tips. Order an apple pie and a cup of ice cream and run that SOB through the McFlurry mixer together. You can thank me later. I've never worked in any fast food restaurant, but where I am, McDonald's on your resume, especially as a young blood fixin' to get another job at a young age, was a massive plus. They're regarded as a company that trains their employees very well and don't put up with any BS. So if you've worked there from the age of 16 till 18 or whatever, you're considered pretty damn reliable. The cups of ranch, like the ones for nuggets, are different than the ranch that goes on wraps and sandwiches. I believe that kind is buttermilk. I think most McDonald's have discontinued the wraps though, sadly. Fun fact, I met the love of my life at a McDonald's. We were both teenagers and closed together 5 nights a week. He and I had the best work ethic because we both worked at McDonald's for a few years, so we knew the closing procedures like the back of our hands. Every time I ordered a wrap, he'd make sure to go grab a ranch cup and use that instead. Always told me it was made with extra love. Cute teenage crap like that. Before we knew it, we got an apartment together, months turned into years, we planned our lives together and almost eloped. I couldn't picture myself with any other person, and neither could he. Sadly, he passed away unexpectedly last year. I was heartbroken, obviously, but it forced me to take a good look at my life and change what I didn't like. Now, every time I think of McDonald's, I get flashbacks that take me back to that blissful time. Such good memories. Definitely wasn't the greatest job, but knowing how to do the procedures in a smart way and working with fun people, who also work smarter, not harder, really made it one of my favorite jobs. This isn't really a secret, more of a story. One time someone replaced the chocolate syrup in the shake machine with barbecue sauce on accident because the bottles are similar. I mean, they're labeled differently, but it still happens. We found out because a few people complained that the chocolate shakes were sour. We remade them for a couple of people and they moved on, but one lady just wouldn't let it go. My manager tasted the shake and was like, "What the frick?" and then looked and saw the culprit. We had to clean the line after that, so we didn't have chocolate shakes for a hot second. Fries are delicious when dipped in Big Mac sauce, or with the honey dip for the McNuggets. Get a cheaper burger dressed as a Mac to save money on buying a Big Mac. You can ask them to throw an apple pie into the McFlurry so you now have a pie McFlurry. The big breakfast usually is made with scrambled eggs. You can ask them to be sunny side up as well. If the fries are yellow or brown, the oil hasn't been changed in a long time. If they come out white or very pale yellow, they're made in fresh oil. One pie is the same cost as 2 pies. Always buy 2, because why the F not? You can ask for leaf lettuce instead of the shredded stuff. Sometimes it tastes better on certain sandwiches. The eggs are real. McDonald's is the biggest buyer of chicken and eggs in the world. Tim Hortons eggs are made of powder. Ugh. People would do just about anything to get their hands on the Beanie Baby Happy Meal toys in the late 90s. We had a rule that you had to buy a meal to get the Beanie Babies, so people would come in, order 6 meals, and then throw away the food and leave with the toys.
Where were you when 9/11 happened? In the forest, camping, no radio, no phone. I came back to civilization 5 days later. Everyone had processed what happened, as much as you would expect. I had not even heard about it, so I was out of sync with the world. Strange times. Man, you must have found a portal out there and accidentally traveled to a bad timeline. There's a really good podcast called 9/12, which is all about how we as a society reacted to 9/11. And one of the stories they tell is about people who were on a boat in the middle of the ocean filming some reality show. It sounds like your experience was very similar to those people. If I'm not mistaken, I think the MTV show The Real World was being filmed during 9/11 as well. I remember them giving them TVs to watch because the show usually didn't allow TVs and stuff in the house. Getting ready to pick up relatives at the airport in preparation for our wedding. How was the airport scene? Oh, their planes were grounded mid-flight. The wedding was canceled. I was pretty young during 9/11, so I wasn't a traveler at that point, but I did have some flights canceled at the start of C-19, and I remember it being a weird feeling. I can only imagine how it felt during 9/11. Under anesthesia at the Boston Children's Hospital, I woke up being moved into an elevator on a gurney. They had finished my surgery, but weren't bringing me to the recovery ward. Boston's Children's Hospital is a very tall building, and Boston had advised all buildings to evacuate all the floors above the 10th floor. So I was moved down to a lobby after my surgery. That's gotta be wild, going under in one reality and waking up in another. That's pretty much like anytime something happens during the night. That last statement is super true. My most recent experience with that was waking up in America and hearing about the earthquakes in Turkey. Not something anyone should have to wake up to. I was sleeping during the first plane, getting ready for work when the second hit. Went to work for 3 hours with no customers. Called the boss, he said close, and went home. Watched CNN and tried to convince my mom that I wasn't about to get drafted. Same, but in high school. Sleeping for the first plane, when waking up to my parents being like, what is going on? Saw the second plane hit. Went to school anyways. We spent all day in every class just watching the news. Sitting on our desks, on the floor, pacing around, just crawling in our own skins. Teachers and students alike. They let us ask questions and express our feelings to the best of everyone's abilities. Lunch period was surreal. There was silence. Not a single plane in the sky. Got in the car, turned on music, and then turned it off immediately. It felt disrespectful. Whatever fast food we got that day was just eaten in silence. So gut-wrenching. Remember it like it was yesterday. Similar, my brother was a truck driver and happened to be in New York State at the time. He called my dad at home. I watched the second plane hit live. I did go to school afterwards, but it was an odd day. I'm in Canada on the border with New York State, so we were glued to CNN. I vaguely remember seeing F-18s flying. I remember sitting in the library watching the news just talking about the events. My brother was stranded in the States for a week or so because the borders were closed. It was long enough over here in Australia. I had an American friend on the internet mention the first plane hit, promoting me to go and turn on the late night news. A few minutes after I started watching, the second plane hit live on TV. Before that, everyone still thought it must have been an accident. But when the second plane hit, we all knew what it meant. This was me at my school. The teachers turned on the news for about a minute before the second plane hit, so my homeroom class saw it happen. After that, the principal got on the PA and said to turn off all the TVs and go about the day as naturally as possible. I was mad when they did that. One of the biggest breaking news events in our lifetime, and they weren't letting us watch it because they were worried that we were scared. I was already scared, and keeping me in the dark made it worse. This must have been a tough situation for adults. I mean, I totally understand wanting to protect children from that madness. It's easily a traumatic experience. On the R train that just passed underneath the towers in Cortlandt Street, the conductor of the R train after mine was instructed to go straight through and not stop. They disobeyed that order and stopped, took on as many people as possible and got out of there. That conductor likely saved a lot of lives. There's almost no mention of that anywhere in the news. Oh my god, that's crazy. Incredibly heroic on their part. I was in Manhattan, watched the towers fall, heard the crowds that had gathered all down Fifth Avenue gasp and scream in unison as the first tower crumbled. Gathered in a packed bar with freaked out coworkers as we first saw the photo of Osama bin Laden on TV. Walked home to Queens with thousands of other shocked New Yorkers in eerie silence, with the occasional ghostly figure of a downtown worker covered in white dust. My ex-wife was in the second tower, got out when the first one was hit. Her brother was in the first tower. Luckily, he also got out. She was knocked down by the concussion of the tower falling. Some stranger picked her up by her elbows. It was her brother. She also had a few other heartwarming tidbits. As she walked home to Brooklyn, she had been breaking in new heels. And some dude in a corner store gave her a pair of flip-flops. They broke 3 blocks later, giving her her first post-9/11 laugh. She still has them today in her hope chest. She also said that people were turning radios to the streets, so she could get a running commentary about potential other attacks, and others were handing out bottles of water to newly minted pedestrian commuters. New Yorkers, man, complete jerks if you're in their way during rush hour. But if you yell help, the whole freaking city comes running. My kind of people. Came home from school, I was in the UK, age 12, with my mom watching it in her office on the 14-inch CRT television/VHS combo. Watched the second one hit. I remember saying, freaking hell, and for once not being told off for it. I have a similar story. I was 8 and also in the UK at the time. I used to go to a friend's house after school and get picked up by my mom after she finished work. I distinctly remember getting in trouble for calling the pilot a silly bastard for flying the plane into a building. I don't think anyone understood the magnitude of the situation at that point. Yeah, that's what I thought when the first plane hit. Some stupid idiot approaching the airport far too low. Then, oh god, this is deliberate, when the second plane hit. Then we got the news of the other planes and I was like, is the US being invaded? I was at home on the other side of the world trying to watch cartoons and being annoyed why I couldn't. I was 8 at the time. Same, 8-year-old Australian here, was totally mad that Pokemon wasn't on that morning. My parents had to sit me down and talk me through the tragedy that had just happened. I remember feeling sad, but also a little mad about missing Pokemon. I was in my mid-20s at the time and on the internet, when a friend in the US told me about the first plane impact. I turned on the late-night CNN feed. Channel 7 used to run it instead of infomercials. I don't remember for sure, but I think it was about 1 a.m. Melbourne time. I woke up my wife and told her I had just saw the start of World War III, and she said, huh? What? I'll just read about it in the morning, and went back to sleep. The next morning, she woke up and said, holy crap, you were serious? That's how I feel when anyone tells me anything while I'm half asleep. I was at the World Trade Center on 9/11 because I worked across the street. I was at the base of the South Tower when I saw the second plane go into the building, and I ran away toward the South Street seaport. It had a huge impact on my life and still does, but I met the love of my life because of it, and now we have a son. I was thinking about it today because New York Magazine did a profile on us on Valentine's Day of 2002 and called it Love After 9/11. There was a lot of coverage after 9/11 on how many surviving firefighters ended up leaving their wives for the widows of their dead colleagues in the years after. Basically, they would be consoling the widows and form a bond over their shared grief. Strange effects of a terrible day. Trauma bonding is a real thing. If you've never heard of it, look it up. I was in the restaurant business at the time. Woke up to start getting ready to go to wine tasting at Windows of the World at 1 p.m., top floor of the North Tower. Then I turned on the TV. I had taken the evening class about 6 months earlier. If you worked at WOW, I'm sorry for the loss of your coworkers. Heather was a really amazing pastry chef. Wow, this imparts a strange feeling. For you to know and share the name of someone who passed away as the result of the attacks, it immediately humanizes it and makes it more personal instead of a thing that happened. Third day of high school in Long Island, every TV was turned on around 8:50 a.m. My fourth period global teacher ran out of the class when the first tower fell. My sequential 2 math teacher still gave us a quiz that day. Kid behind me was crying the whole time. His parents worked at the World Trade Center. Never saw him again the following day. That next day, they sent the freshman class on a retreat to meet their fellow classmates, as we previously planned. It was quiet the whole time. In case anyone was curious, I don't remember the kid's name, and I'm pretty sure he lost both parents that day and already knew that they were gone. And he had told the math teacher, who was Mrs. Clean. So yes, she gave us the quiz and him with the possible knowledge of his parents being gone. My high school locked down, and they wouldn't tell us what happened until later in the day. It sucked because it made the whole day strange. Mine also locked down. I was 1 week into the 10th grade studying for my math class. That teacher said, F that, this is history, and wheeled in a TV to the center of the board and turned it on. I stayed in that class for the next 3 periods. I often squatted in his room with some other people, until I got picked up. He still goes down as my favorite teacher. I was in college and my art history professor gave us a test that day. It was at 11 a.m. and all I remember is all of us sitting there just blinking and looking around. I was a sophomore, and someone asked our anthropology professor to turn on the TV. That was already in the classroom, so we could try to understand what was going on. She refused, but none of us really understood what was happening at that point. I had to watch the second plane hit while having breakfast at the main cafeteria a bit later. The TV was very smallish and attached to the wall where it met the ceiling, and it was always on mute. I remember that no one could get cell phone service all day. Aside from the usual contingent of future hipsters, most of the student body had cell phones, but they weren't at all the means of rapid information they are now. Man, I'm old. I don't think I had a cell phone during 9/11, but I think I remember hearing about how phone lines weren't working. Working at a bakery listening to the radio. I was 21. It reminded me of the War of the Worlds broadcast that I learned about in history class. I still wasn't sure it was real until I got home and saw it for myself. Driving to Rutgers University, about 30 miles from New York City, seeing a giant plume of smoke coming up and not realizing what it was from. I got to campus and was told classes were canceled and we were under attack. I had just woke up, turned on the radio, heard the DJ talking about the first plane hitting, then watched the second plane hit live on TV. I was on a plane halfway over the Atlantic from Germany going back to the US. The plane had to turn around and go back to Germany. I was 10 months old. I still have the passport with my 9/11/01 stamp on it. Wow, there's an amazing documentary about the emergency landings that had to take place at the airport in Canada because of the hijackings. It's an interesting story, but I'm glad your family was able to go back instead of having to deal with that. I was working in downtown Ottawa, Canada, for those that don't know, in a skyscraper when it came on the news after the first plane hit. I remember the first news saying that they thought it was a news helicopter that had accidentally hit one of the towers. I went to one of our boardrooms and saw the second tower hit live on TV on one of our massive projector screens. We were told to go home at some point after the news of other planes started coming down. Leaving our building and traveling through downtown was intense. We knew planes were being diverted, we didn't know if we were under attack too. I was 1 block away from Parliament Hill, and the streets were filled with military and heavily armed police vehicles. I also saw people jumping and the towers fall while it was being recorded live. Even though I wasn't in New York City, it was still an event experienced in real time. Some years, on September 11th, it hits harder for some reason. I was in the 5th grade. 5th floor math class looking out the window like usual at the Manhattan skyline from our school in Queens. We didn't see the first plane hit, but we did see the smoke and we pointed it out to our teacher and said that must be some kind of fire. I remember thinking, how the heck were the firemen going to spray water all the way to the top? Teacher next door came in and told our math teacher to turn on the radio. When the second plane hit, the radio went off, and soon after we were all called to the lunchroom. Some of the kids' names were called, and they were pulled to go to the principal's office afterwards. I found out that their parents had worked in the towers. It was very surreal not knowing what was going on and the teachers all huddling together whispering amongst themselves. After a few hours, they let us go home, and I ran home across the street and made it to the 5th floor apartment asking my mom what was going on, and if I could go to the roof and look at the skyline. I went up there by myself and it was the weirdest view I'd ever seen. The towers weren't there anymore. I stayed there for what felt like the rest of the day just looking at the smoke and fighter jets flying above me towards Manhattan. School days for the next few months were weird. We were like in this limbo where all we had to do was have positive talks about America and make "United we stand, divided we fall" posters to hang around town. But there was always an underlying feeling of hurt and sadness. Those were some strange days. At the exact moment, sleeping. I was in California, so I was still asleep at the time. I was in college and I overslept that day, woke up and was in a rush to get to my first class. My roommate at the time was trying to show me something on TV that morning, but I was in so much of a rush I didn't pay attention to him and left for class. In the car, I had a CD playing. If I had the radio on, I probably would have heard it there. When I got to school, the parking lot was usually full, and running late meant you wouldn't be able to find a parking spot. But it was almost empty, and I was able to get a parking spot right up in front of the school. I should have known something was off, but I was just happy to be getting a good parking spot. I rushed to class, and when I got there, this class that usually had 50 students normally had about a half dozen people there. I said, "What's going on? Where is everybody?" That's when I finally found out what happened. The internet was a thing and some people did have cell phones, but there wasn't constant communication like there is now, so I was able to go the whole morning without knowing. I was also in college and late for class that day, but still living at home. Flicked on the light bulb and it burned out. Went downstairs to get a new one and said, "Hey mom, the light burned out." And she said, "This is honestly the worst thing I've ever seen or heard." I was like, "Don't worry, I'm changing it now." 10 minutes later, idiot me figured out what she meant. She had saw the second plane hit. I remember for years waiting for things to settle down and get back to normal, and it just never did. So this is a genuine question. I was born in 2002 and always hear about people saying things never got back to normal after 9/11. But what changed? I realize airport security is very different now, but beyond that, I've never been able to grasp what people were talking about. Was it similar to the pandemic where it was just a fundamental culture shift that can't really be articulated, or was it something more tangible than that? Well, this is my opinion as a Gen Xer, 1967. There was this aura of invincibility. The US takes the fight to you, and no one ever came to our house and picked a fight with America. The closest thing was Pearl Harbor, and you saw how things turned out for Japan. So don't even think about it. In that one act, America was no longer invincible. Also, it wasn't a country who did it, but a group of secret extremists. We were attacked by a ghost. The US was vulnerable to a ragtag group of misfits. What if a country with resources wanted to do us harm? We're screwed. This sense of and projection of invincibility has never returned. I was taught in school the US is a melting pot of individuals. We're all different individuals. But you come to America, assimilate, and melt into the big happy family called America. Middle Easterns who immigrated to America were perceived as rejections of their country's cultures and ideologies in favor of becoming more westernized. That mindset of welcoming and acceptance of foreigners flipped immediately. The hijackers, who were foreigners, lived amongst us for months and years. Immediately, there was a huge distrust of Middle Easterners. This has not changed for a lot of Americans and has given a rise to this plague of nationalism you see now. Also, the heightened airport security and the US government's surveillance of its citizens in the name of national security flies in the face of this notion America is the freest country on earth. Additionally, there was this huge amount of propaganda that said, as a patriotic American, if you see something suspicious, say something to authorities. This sense of true freedom has never returned, and we're all on the outlook to report something suspicious. I believe this has morphed into Karens reporting suspicious people, aka minorities, in their neighborhoods. There's probably more. These are the biggest changes I've seen from 9/11, and there's no denying that there was a ripple effect after. Celebrating my 17th birthday. This was in Colorado, so the news broke right after I left for school. I got flowers and cards from friends, and we hung out before class started. Then I went to first period. We had a sub and she opened the class with the news. She let us watch it on TV, and by that point, both towers had already been hit. I was kind of just half doing my assignments and checking the TV. I distinctly remember looking up after the first tower collapsed and said, dumbfounded, "Where's the other one?" Every class had the news on, and we obviously didn't do anything else that day. Then I went home and we didn't really know what to do. Nobody felt like celebrating, but my grandparents were there, so I decided to at least open gifts. At the time, shirts with cityscapes were trendy. They were black with the skyline and silver glitter. I pointed out one or two mentions that they could be a cool birthday gift. I opened one box, and staring back at me is one of the shirts I liked. It was the World Trade Center. We all stared in horrified silence, and I just put it down and sat there for a moment. Canadian here. I was just dropping my girlfriend off to class, and I heard about it on the CBC. I got home to see the replay of the second plane hit. I was driving on the South Street by the Dahl residence in Halifax when I heard it. I will never forget that day or that moment. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a joke too. I was in the 4th grade at the time. As I remember it, it was just a normal day. Nothing odd going on at school in the morning. A classmate, her mother babysat me from time to time, went home for lunch. When she came back to school, she said something about how planes had hit a tower in the US. I don't remember anything out of the ordinary that afternoon at school, but all I could think about is how outrageous of a story that was. I didn't like her much. She lied all the time too. I remember after my dad came in to pick me up to take me home, I put it on TV, getting ready to watch The Simpsons and wait for dinner. But The Simpsons weren't on. All it was on almost every channel was the news about what had happened. And at that moment I was like, oh my god, she wasn't lying. Was still mad The Simpsons weren't on, but I ended up not sleeping that night. I was asleep at my parents' house. My mom came in and woke me up. She was upset. She wouldn't tell me what it was at first. She made me get up and see it on TV. I still had to go to work that day at Walmart, but there wasn't anybody shopping. I was 18, fresh out of high school. I remember thinking, among other things, that we were about to go to war, and I would probably get drafted. So I figured why not end this video with my own personal story where I was during 9/11. I was in the 8th grade, and I had just gotten to my dyslexia class. This class only had like 6 students in it, and we were pretty cool with the teacher. Well, we thought it was going to be a normal goof around day when one of my classmates, a big guy, we will call him Jimmy, comes walking into the class and says, "Did you guys see? A plane crashed into a building." We all responded like, "What are you talking about, Jimmy?" He then said, "Yeah, look, turn on the TV, it's on the news." So my teacher lets us turn on the TV we had in the classroom, and we just sat there and watched the news coverage of the planes crashing into the towers. Now, I won't sit here and say I understood the gravity of the situation at the time. I was in middle school. All I cared about was video games, girls, and TV. I finished the rest of the day, but so many kids were taken out of class by their families. I remember going home and every channel just covering the attacks. I think only kids channels like Nickelodeon continued playing their regular programming. I was really into MTV at the time, and even they were covering the attacks. I might be mistaken. I remember trying to change the channel and my brother getting super pissed at me the next morning, said I was being disrespectful or something along those lines. I remember my mom getting after him and saying something like, "Don't get mad at him, just let him be a kid." Kind of her way of shielding me from the madness of what was going on. After that, I just remember the world felt different. America was no longer this place that felt safe or awesome. This might have been the first time I noticed hate in the world, because as many know, people from the Middle East during this time got treated differently. It was horrible. But on the other side of the coin, it was also the one time that America felt united. Everyone was on board with getting justice for what happened. Kinda surreal when you compare 9/11 to how Americans treat each other today. 9/11 changed how America saw the world, in my opinion. I also think it reminded a lot of people that life is fragile, and you should appreciate every moment you got, because you never know when it's gonna be your last. Ugly dudes with hot wives. How did you do it? By being hot when I was younger. I've aged horribly while my wife has aged like fine wine. I feel you. My last 3 years, I've aged like 10 years. I've avoided aging for so long. My wife keeps getting prettier. Men also don't do the daily upkeep that most straight women do. That could account for it. I laughed at that last comment because it seems like that person thinks that gay women don't have a skin routine. Hell, I've seen gay men with better skin than some women. Smoke and mirrors. She thinks I'm hot, but it's all confidence and superficial charm. It's been 21 years and I've been white knuckling this whole relationship hoping she doesn't notice that I'm a fat dork. I stalked your profile. You're a pretty handsome dude. Nice beard, man. You and your wife look great together. Thanks, she's got a banging body and puts her right out of my league, but she won't let me post those pics as proof. I think Pete Davidson has shown everyone that looks don't matter when it comes to getting women. And that's not me talking crap. He has a joke about it. I believe my wife is damn near blind. Wow, this has actually never really occurred to me, but my best relationship I ever had was with a gal who was just shy of being legally blind. I've never really thought about it much. Pretty much been single ever since. Time for you to start hanging out in the Braille section of the library, my dude. My wife has no depth perception and has pretty bad eyesight. The only logical reason is because she can't see me. Now get out of my swamp. In your pictures, I see someone with a lively face and laughing eyes. You look kind enough and your comment tells me you're very humorous. The picture you chose of her and your comment both tell me that you're caring and appreciative towards her. I think you all overestimate the importance of socially accepted good looks. I admit that being actively ugly might be a hindrance, but otherwise it's not really that important. As they say, good looks get you in the door, personality makes them stay and happy. I like to think of it like this. Good looks matter for a lot of hookups, but for actual relationships, personality is far more important. Six-pack abs don't matter as much as good communication skills, the ability to stay calm under pressure, and the willingness to compromise with your partner. I wholeheartedly agree with that last comment. Good-looking people destroy when it comes to the dating scene, but ask them how many good or healthy relationships they've had. If you need more evidence, just look at Hollywood relationships. My wife has terrible taste. If I'm being honest, my wife's gotten hotter over the last 25 years, and I've gotten old. I think her secret is a great skincare routine, exercise, and good genes. I was in high school when that whole Wear Sunscreen song came out in the late 90s. I took that song to heart, wore it every day, and I'm now in my 40s. I'm glad I did. I make her laugh and give great hugs. Great hugs are such an underrated skill. I have a girthy, and I mean massively good sense of humor. Just reading that made me wet, because I snorted while drinking. I blew a load of my coffee all over the table. These comments were small, but they got the job done. My wife told me I have a great sense of humor and can always brighten her day with it. She also said that I really listen to her when we talk. I definitely married up. I actually don't know. It can't be money because my job is one of the worst paying jobs in our country. It's something like 98.5% of full-time jobs make more than mine. And it can't be because of having a huge member, because mine is way below average. If I had to guess, maybe it's because I'm funny, like I think that I'm honest, like way too honest. I don't make much money and have an average pee-pee. Quotes from a man you can trust. You pay attention to the bits other men don't typically pay attention to. My wife last week. She told me to say that I know the motion of the ocean, but as a real answer, I pay attention to the small things. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. We have good communication. I try my best to make her feel loved. I never pressure her into anything, and we encourage each other to keep improving. If we fight, we resolve it pretty quickly because we're both able to apologize and recognize our fault. It's just about being able to say, hey, I love you and I want to talk this through because I know that we can figure it out together. We've probably had 2 or 3 big fights in our relationship, but we've always sat down and talked about it, warts and all. Spoken like a man that knows the meaning of a relationship. My friend is a short, overweight, dwarven-looking man and has a really hot girlfriend. It's all charisma. I used to run with a guy like that too. He was about 5'6" and over 200 pounds, so short and pudgy. He made okay money, but certainly wasn't rich. Yet he was always with someone you would consider to be way out of his league. How did he manage it? I figure he had 2 things going for him. 1, the guy was genuinely funny. If you're hanging around with this guy, he will keep you laughing nonstop. And 2, confidence. He'll talk to anyone, and if you shoot him down, he'll just chat up your friend without missing a beat. This kind of describes me, but also you would be surprised. There's plenty of women, like my GF, who find short, overweight, dwarven-looking men very attractive. My GF is taller than me and rubs my hairy belly in bed just like I'm a king. And she's quite hot. I like men of all heights, but my ex-husband was shorter than me and my current partner is only a little taller than me. I don't understand the need to have a large, tall man. I'm not looking for a father figure. Lots of wonderful men get overlooked because of this. There's gold in them hills out there, ladies. Part of me feels like this post was made by hobbits. Got a short, overweight, balding friend. We literally call him George Costanza. He's just confident, enthusiastic, and always doing something because he takes his hobbies seriously. His girlfriend seems the opposite, even though she's a smoke show. So it was partly a lucky find, but he also clearly adds substance to anyone's life he's in. He also comes from a very wealthy family, if you need that information. I feel like the wealthy family info is a double-edged sword because on one hand, people will automatically think, oh, she's a gold digger. But then on the other hand, it sucks for those women that are genuinely into a person and not for the money. They get overlooked. How men make us feel while we're in their presence is crucial. Sometimes by virtue of the fact that the guy showing you the attention is hot, you'll feel attractive simply because logic dictates that he could exclusively be chatting up hot women if he wants to be. So he must think you're hot. That rush of emotion wears off real quick if he's got absolutely nothing going on apart from his looks. Doubly fast if he's an arrogant jerk. As multiple people are and have always been saying, if you make us laugh and are pleasant, you're going to make us feel like the most beautiful, captivating woman in the room. That's not a high we want to come down from. Make them laugh, treat them well. Do fun stuff together, do chores, admit when you're wrong, give compliments without prompting, learn what they do and don't like, then put that knowledge to work. Have a handle on your own psychology so you can deal with your own business. Listen twice as much as you talk. This is true. I spent an hour talking to my husband about a book I finished today. I know he wasn't completely interested, but he listened, asked questions, and was engaged. It's the sexiest thing in the world that he cares enough about me just to let me ramble and poorly explain why I love this book. I won't lie to you, when I can have a deep, thoughtful conversation with a woman, it is one of the sexiest things in the world. You know those guys who brag about finishing a pudding cup without a spoon? Well, I can clean out a peanut butter jar. No idea why he's so successful with the ladies, he says, sitting at the end of the bar licking his eyebrows. Let me tell you guys, you're gonna wanna start off like a butterfly landing on a flower and finish like a bulldog eating oatmeal. I like oatmeal. I'm not ugly, but I got a woman way hotter than me to marry me. Turns out, if you have a good personality and are slightly interesting, then you can get away with being a 5. But, the internet tells me that women only want alpha bros with muscles and money that make their bed every morning. Wait a minute. Do we really think that alpha bros make their bed every morning? Unless we think all alpha males are the American Psycho type. I'll give my perspective from the other side. My boyfriend isn't classically handsome. His hairline is receding and the man is a beanpole and somewhat effeminate. Exactly who Andrew Tate claims will never get a woman. But I'm obsessed with him and I'm so glad and proud that he's mine. Why is that? He listens when I talk. He cleans up after himself. He's funny and insightful and above all, kind. He cooks, he's terrible at it, but he tries hard. He's like the most gentle man I've ever met, and because of that, I don't feel the fear I've felt around most other men in my life. My cats love him, he feeds me, he apologizes when he's wrong, and I feel secure enough to admit when I'm wrong too. We talk out every problem as a us versus the problem instead of a me versus him. He gives me space when I need it, and attention when I need it too. We just respect each other. Those things aren't hard, but he's the first to check all those boxes. He's 100 out of 10 for me, and I'll grow old and die happily with him. I'll add on to this. My husband is more than a decade older than I am. He has a receding hairline when we met and was working 2 jobs. Our sense of humor is the same, so is our sense of justice. Our dark sides match, and he's great at housework. Then came the hookups. Oh my god, we matched there too. It was over for me. I fell in love. It's still those same qualities that make every day happy and full of laughter. You can't survive the pitfalls of life without being able to laugh. Beauty fades, hair falls out, and wrinkles form. Let's keep spreading the love for good men. My fiance is average to everyone but me. He's overweight, goofy, awkward, and kinda dumb. I say this lovingly, I'm also dumb. Think of the last 2 brain cells meme? That's us. He also makes me laugh every single day. Our childlike qualities align perfectly to keep us happy and well maintained. So we can be goofy idiots all day with each other, and it's fantastic. He embraces my mean streak that comes out playfully, to its full extent, so I can be a little brat. Every flaw I see in myself, he sees as a beauty. He also knows how to handle my mood swings and be so gentle with me on my bad days. He doesn't need to be mothered like many men, loves providing for me, as I do him, and is as sweet as candy. I can't wait to marry him. My husband has been balding since the day we met and it's never bothered me. But damn, he's funny. I made a little joke about a very shocked looking cinder block and he ran with it. We giggled in the car like school kids over a fart. We're both over 30. I have about an extra 20 to 30 pounds and he has a little bit more than that. But when he comes home and hugs me, it's all warm and safe. I've always been one of those guys where people are like, dude, how did you get her? I'm super tall, which probably helps, but I've always been overweight. I'm not exactly sloth. Look up the Goonies, youngsters, you're welcome. But I'm not Marlon Brando either. I'm highly average looking, I do pretty well financially, but you wouldn't know that if you looked at me, my truck, or home, and when I got my wife, I was broke AF. I always tell them that it isn't that hard. Treat them like people you value and respect. Listen to them, take an interest in them and the things that are important to them. Put in some genuine effort and show them you care. It's easier and more effective to constantly do little things to show her how you care than always trying to prove it with some big gesture. Then just take care of yourself. Good hygiene, keep your house and ride clean, have a couple of genuine interests and hobbies. It makes you more interesting and a well-rounded person. Learn to cook. No woman wants a man-child who can't properly feed himself, and I've not met a woman yet that doesn't like a man that can cook. I personally would like to add, don't listen to douchebags. Andrew Tate is the latest one of these, but there's always some popular famous one at any given time. My husband and I met in college. What made me choose him over more conventionally attractive men who were interested in me at the time? He was extremely honest. When we talked, he listened and responded not in a way to try to get with me, but in a way you listen and respond to your best friend. And that's how I knew it was genuine. I don't know how, but I can tell when a guy is trying to prove that he's a good listener for flirty reasons versus actually connecting through the listening. This made me feel so safe and respected. I knew something was different about him. Our very first conversation was about philosophy. By the way, today we've been married for a decade now, and we absolutely laugh like kids together every single day. It sounds stupid, but Bumble. He was from the next town over. I wouldn't normally have talked to him because he didn't put anything on his profile or really fill it out. But something about him seemed kind of like, I don't know, genuine or sweet? I don't know how to explain it. He just turned out to be a bit shy, so it's hard for him to talk about himself to strangers. I'm glad I gave it a shot though. Opposite side here, ugly chick with handsome dude. I let him touch my chesticles. Works 100% of the time. My homie was a nice dude, spent 6 years third wheeling for the fun of it, but in the end glad to see he got married. He said all he did was be funny and things went over time. I feel like the waiting game advice can be bad advice for most men. It's probably better to let your feelings known instead of waiting 6 years and then possibly getting rejected. It being Valentine's Day and all, when my boyfriend and I found each other online, he would make any excuse not to video chat with me. We exchanged pics, he only had 2, but I felt it was necessary to see each other live before meeting. Pics don't show the true person. I was mainly thinking of safety and I was about to bail on him. He sweetly convinced me to be patient and wait to meet in person. I asked why. I thought he was a serial killer or something. He assured me that he wasn't. He simply didn't want my first impression of him to be on video chat. Cautiously, I decided to be patient. We proceeded to text and call each other every day for the next 2 weeks. The texts became love letters and the calls were exciting. I got to know him on a much deeper level and I thought his voice was so sexy. He made me laugh and he was thoughtful. He was also very kind-hearted. but also very masculine, which I love. He exuded confidence, the chemistry was off the charts, the laughter was constant. When we met for the first time, it didn't matter what he looked like. He was not traditionally handsome by society standards. He was a little overweight, bald, and a bit hunched over. But I think he's gorgeous. He knew exactly what he could offer me and navigated our meeting to allow us to fall in love. Some might think that he was perhaps hiding, but we could have missed out on great love. He is the love of my life. Sometimes he jokes and asks what I see in him, and he calls himself ugly. I remind him of our love story and he smiles. I also remind him that I think he's hot AF. I plan on being his wife one day, because he's the love of my life. Well, it certainly wasn't my pee-pee size or money. Neither of those are worth bragging about. I treated her like a good friend, not an object of infatuation. That caught her attention. I got her to fall in love with me by proving to be well-rounded in my life and very capable. As Red Green would say, if the woman don't find you handsome, make sure they find you handy. Have a sense of humor, especially about yourself, and be comfortable laughing. Listen, clean the house, be kind to animals and service workers. The bar is incredibly, and I mean staggeringly, low. I'm not an ugly guy per se, but I'm stone cold average at best. I'm totally forgettable, but my wife is hot. She's actually attracting attention. She's the kind of woman that men buy things for out of the blue. I listen to her, I share chores with her, I take care of her, I encourage her to do things that make her happy. I spend time with her, and I show interest in the things that she has interest in. Wait, guys are buying things for your wife out of the blue? Yep, she was at the mall with her mother one day, and the guy in line behind her bought her food. A couple of times last year, she had guys at the water park buying her soft drinks. Once she was watching the kids at the pool on vacation, a guy bought popsicles for the kids, shot daggers at me when I walked up and sat beside her. I've long lost count of how many drinks have been bought for her at bars, even once when they realized I was there. Stuff like that. Don't get me started on how often guys come up and just chat with her. Shout out to this guy for just rolling with the punches. I know so many jerks that would get mad at their girls because they're too attractive. Complete idiots. I load the dishwasher instead of leaving my crap in the sink. She finds it hot as hell. I can lick my eyebrows. To be honest, very attractive women sometimes get less attention than you'd think, because guys think that they're just out of their league or something. So the first step to dating anyone is actually putting yourself out there and asking. Nothing's foolproof, but you'd be surprised at the results sometimes, since a lot of guys just self-reject out of being a contender because they don't think they have a shot. That's a huge piece of advice that I've gotten from some more charismatic friends. If you're interested in someone, don't reject yourself. I can honestly say I have objectively the most attractive wife out of my friend group. I was also the one who had no fear at all of rejection. And practice helps to get over those fears. Friend told me back in the day that I went on far more dates than anyone he knew or ever heard of. It doesn't guarantee that the person you fall in love with will be great looking, but if you never talk to anyone, them odds are zero. In regards to the don't reject yourself comment, take that a step further and apply it to everything in life. It will be a huge benefit, trust me. As a longtime restaurant employee, I believe I've seen many cooks and dishwashers unlock the secret, feed them, and agree when they're mad at someone. Honestly, the weight of my heart is definitely through my stomach. My wife is very shy and reserved. I think I was just the only guy that didn't scare her off. I hit the perfect balance of pursuing her and giving her space. Like feeding a wild cat, until I eventually lured her to a church by the altar. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and her glasses prescription wasn't up to date. Guys that have never been with an attractive woman, and probably not many women in general, will say money. Guys that have been with attractive partners, being funny, treat women with respect, being a decent human being, that's what they do. Yeah, I can confirm, I know plenty of guys that don't have money that have gotten plenty of women. I love these threads because every woman in here is like, he's super nice, he's kind, loves dogs and kids and tips at the restaurant, has a passion for insert benign hobby here, and takes things in stride. He doesn't have a fragile ego and isn't insecure. Just be chill and girls will like you because you aren't dangerous and a liability prone to violence. And the guys in this thread are like, ugh, must be rich, must have a huge wiener. I just have no idea what else it could be because women lie so much and just aren't smart enough to know what they really want. It happens every time. I am very lucky that she was super interested in me from the start. I was just too stupid to notice at first. All worked out in the end, I'm still extremely happy with her. I was just myself and I kept being myself, and that is the key. I see guys pretending to be someone they're not, and that is a big, big mistake, man. I do think many men overthink that they need to be someone to attract women. At the end of the day, do you want an attractive girlfriend, or do you want someone that'll accept you for who you are? If you just be yourself, you might get both. Be good at cooking, your job, and just generally being good at social functions you both agree with. It's called communication. The ways you're good at these things can vary, but generally people are looking, hopefully, for someone who complements your weaknesses, appreciates your strengths, and you can genuinely be at your most comfortable with. My source? Been with my wife for 15 years from ages 21 to 36. My fiance is absolutely stunning, and to be honest, I'm like medium ugly, but I made her laugh like no other man could hope to, and just treated her well and respected her. I've learned to realize that hot women care more about personality than average looking women. I was a late bloomer, went from a 4 on a good day to a 7 or maybe an 8 thanks to genetics and heavy lifting. We get handsome, but holy hell does it not start that way. I met my wife when I was in my early 20s. She was 19. She was one of those girls that just glows, insanely gorgeous. During our first date, I was absolutely certain she was going to just get up and leave. She didn't. After a few days, I asked her why she hadn't run away yet. She said, "I like you for you." She surprised me at work one day by bringing lunch for a picnic, and several of my coworkers said, "How the hell did you land her?" It wasn't money, although I do have a solid career and decent money. In 10 years of marriage, my wife has asked for practically nothing, and she's as anti-materialistic as you can get. I was just myself and somehow lucked out in finding a girl who was looking for that. I won't lie, I had some depressing encounters with women prior to meeting my wife. Never had a real date even until her. When I was 17, I had a girl walk into a restaurant, see me, and leave. I asked out a classmate in college and she said the dreaded, haha, ew, no. Plenty of stories. It was sad. Man, always hearing stories about people seeing someone and then just leaving is always sad to hear.
What are some common forms of sexism that men face? I was a single dad for 20 years. There are a lot of places that still reflect parenting being dominated by mothers. From mom's talk mornings at my son's school to being told that Koabo.com didn't want me because I was a dad. And then there were the assumptions that I didn't have custody. Some by state officials, with me repeatedly needing to explain that he was in my care 28 days of the month. I'm certain if the situations were reversed, I would have been ordered to pay more than $60 a week for child support. Heck, if I was in California, I might have had to end up paying her child support even as our son lived with me 28 days of the month. I could probably give examples all day. I do excuse most individuals' behaviors as they are making assumptions based upon what's true 90% of the time. The systemic stuff needs to change though. Women and men are no longer in the same place in society as they were when these laws were written. As someone whose father is a nasty piece of work who also didn't pay child support, I have to agree with this. As they said, men and women are not in the same places that they were like when these laws were written, societally, at least not in the West. Thus, I don't think it's controversial to say that more cases need to be judged on an individual level by who is in the wrong and who has done what, no matter what their gender or anything is. The double standard. I remember watching a clip from The View, I think. I don't remember too many of the specifics, but the topic of conversation was that a woman who had become fed up with her husband and his actions had proceeded to cut his penis off in the middle of the night and threw it into the trash compactor, or something like that. Again, details are fuzzy. One of the ladies, might have been Sharon Osbourne, talked about how hell hath no fury or he shouldn't have been messing around, and the crowd went wild. Most of the women in the audience and on the panel were clapping and whooping it up. Then one lone female member of the panel, I wish I could remember who it was, it took quality courage, spoke up and said that them all laughing about this wasn't right. In fact, it was quite wrong. She pointed out how differently the panel and audience would have reacted if the situation had been a man who had cut his wife's breasts off and thrown it in the dishwasher, regardless of what actions they were upset with or felt grieved. The idea of mutilating your spouse shouldn't be met with laughter and applause. From what I remember, some of the other ladies on the panel tried to say, that's different, and others rolled their eyes or became uncomfortable. I remember thinking what courage it must have taken to call out the double standard right then and there, on television with the studio audience clearly already on the side of the original joke. It shouldn't matter what your gender is. Call out double standards when confronted with them. Apparently, the show was The Talk, not The View, and the woman who had the courage to speak up was Sarah Gilbert. Thank you. Let's be honest, it's not just a gender thing. The world is absolutely full of double standards in race, religion, and all kinds of things. Really, it's just a people thing where some people just cannot stand to be called out for their bad behavior, but are more than willing to just shout to the heavens how someone else has done wrong. My wife and I decided to hire a male nanny. This decision causes me, my wife, and the male nanny to experience a whole range of uncomfortable situations. Because we live in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of people assume we're a polyamorous couple. We are not. Some people assume that me and the male nanny are a gay couple and my wife was our surrogate. On the first day of school, for example, my daughter's teacher introduced us as her daddies, even though she had met with my wife on multiple occasions beforehand. Others simply can't wrap their head around the fact that a man might want to work in childcare. I can't tell you how many warnings we've received, even from within our own families, that we have to watch him closely because it's not a natural thing for a man to want to work in childcare. He must be a pedophile. When it comes to raising children, men still face an enormous amount of sexism from all sides. This is incredibly true. Men who want to work in childcare are looked at very strangely because it is an odd thing why a man would want to be involved with a child that isn't their own. I mean, hell, there are some men out there who don't even want to be a part of their own child's life. So, I'll admit, I understand the skepticism. TLDR, domestic court system is biased against men start to finish. I was stalked by an ex. Everyone was like, "You must have given it to her good, LOL." To top it off, I was treated like the criminal every time I called the cops. When I went to file for a restraining order, I had to ask 3 times because they kept referring me to a courtroom assuming I had been served. And the icing on top, the judge I finally got treated me like I was a whiny baby and gutted the restraining order. I'm still convinced the only reason I got it at all was that I had my family there for support.
I fear for any day that I'm in public with my niece and her parents are nearby. Little kids can become emotional and are too young to understand the ramifications of shouting something like, "You're not my dad," when they get told something they don't want to hear.
This is true. It's all too true. If a man sees a child that's lost potentially and it's like, oh damn, that kid needs someone to check up on them or whatever, you have to weigh out in your head how appropriate or weird it might look for you as a man to approach a child. My husband and I have 2 daughters. One is his stepdaughter and I have joint custody. A few years ago, my friend paid for me to fly out to Seattle and stay a few days for her birthday. Our daughter was almost 2. My mom went into a panic. Who is going to watch the baby? Well, her completely capable and loving father is here. And I guess since he is a competent person with normal functioning cognitive abilities and, he's her father, I guess him? She does this anytime I do anything by myself. Where's the baby? Who is taking care of the baby? Her father, you goddamn shrew. Sorry, I ranted a little. Well, that sounds like a personal issue of the shrew. I mean, there is a typical thing in sitcoms and whatnot, especially family-orientated ones, where the father is usually an idiot with maybe every so often a smidgen of good advice or something, but for the most part, they're kind of an irresponsible jackass. So I just think at this point, it's a problem of the shrew ladies. TLDR, men are perceived to be disposable. Young men in every society are viewed as infinitely disposable. They are cannon fodder. Everyone craps themselves when female civilians are victims of a battle in war. No one gives 2 craps about the young male soldiers, most of which were either conscripts or forced into the military due to lack of opportunities. Civilians equal women and children. Read any of the recent articles about Aleppo. The headlines or text in the article always has this crap like, many of those killed were women and children, or 1 in 5 of the victims were women and children, and it's infuriating. Who do you think the other 4 to 5 victims were? Freaking trees? I googled Aleppo and went on to Google News, and this was the last result. I haven't read all of the articles, of course, but I'm sure a lot more specifically mention women and children and leave out men. Male disposability is real. How many victims of violence in video games, movies, TV shows, plays, books, etc. are male? Now tell me how many victims of violent crime, the homeless, army casualties, and members are male. Yet these things are barely talked about. What is one of the leading causes of homelessness? Divorce. What is the leading cause of divorce? The man losing his job. Which gender has a higher successful self-deletion rate? Men, 5-to-1 ratio. Which gender has a lower life expectancy? Men, -5 years. Which gender gets the majority of government funding and funding from charities for healthcare? Women. And I'm sure that everyone knows about the situation with divorce cases and family courts because people seem to at least be aware of the problem there because of organizations like Fathers for Justice. Then we get to the prevention of domestic violence against women and girls specifically. That's freaking dumb. Why not try to prevent it against everyone? Women, men, girls, and boys. Men are much less likely to seek aid for domestic violence, and there are barely any domestic abuse shelters for men, whereas there is a huge amount of shelters for women. My point with all of this isn't screw women, they have it good. It's that sexism against men isn't acknowledged because men are seen as disposable and it's society's and the government's fault. I'm glad this individual specified that this wasn't a screw women, they've had it too good for too long kind of thing, because Lord knows in very many places outside of the Western world, they've still got it pretty goddamn bad. Getting crap for being teachers because men plus kids equals he's a pedo. At least that's the one off the top of my head that makes me the angriest. My abusers were female. I started doing a lot better in school once I had male teachers around. I've always felt safer with men. Aw, look, Dad's babysitting today. Hell no. He's parenting, like he's supposed to. Stop flapping your dentures, Grandma. Father stays home with kids while Mother works. She must have his nuts in a bag in the freezer. Or maybe he's just too dumb to get a decent job and his wife has to take care of all of them. Granted, I know one family where that's the case. He's too mentally ill to work in most environments, so she teaches and he stays home with their kids. But that's not the norm in the Mr. Mom situations I've seen. That is the first time I've ever heard of a Mr. Mom. Is that like, it's like a label, it's a situation, whatever? All I'm thinking is Mr. Men. I found out that I'm unattractive a few months ago. It felt pretty bad, to be honest. A co-worker/friend of mine who I've been pals with for nearly 2 years, and I know her husband and am great pals with him, came to work very dressed up. Way more than normal, so being a friend and wanting her to know I noticed how great she looked, simply commented, "Wow, co-worker, you look very nice. Going to a wedding or something?" She laughed it off, and that was that. Later on, I got a message from her. "Hey, about what you said, I've known you for a long time and I know you didn't mean anything weird by it, but that was kind of creepy. Don't say things like that. Just wanted you to know." I felt terrible. I didn't know how what I said was construed as creepy, but I apologized and let it go. When lunch rolled around and we were hanging out in the lunch area when another co-worker walked by and said, "Wow, you look great. Got anything planned after work?" She blushed, thanked him, and then he left. I sat there waiting for her to say something like, "See, how weird," or something like that. Nope, so I brought it up. She said it wasn't really that creepy, so I pushed the issue and we talked about it. After a long discussion on why me saying it was creepy and him saying it wasn't, we came to two conclusions. It was either weird because she's known me for much longer and it was weird to be hit on by a close friend, while it wasn't weird for someone she only knew a bit. Or it was because he was handsome and I was not. Okay guys, let's rewind a bit. The first few "she's a C-word" responses were fine, but it seems like everyone thinks she's a total B for saying that. I'll defend her because I don't think she was trying to be a butt about it. Both the text and the chat at lunch were very open, and I genuinely think she was looking out for me. She's married, and I'm great friends with both her and her husband. I still regularly hang out with them, and they both have bent over backwards to help me. So I'm not being used or being mistreated. I think there is a weird knee-jerk thought process that someone you don't find attractive flirting with you is creepy, while someone who is attractive is kind of empowering. But it goes both ways. If a 60-year-old lady who smoked since she was 8 told me that I looked great, I'd internally squirm if I thought she was hitting on me. Compliments are nice, but if we think we're being hit on by someone we don't find attractive, I think a lot of people think it's either gross, weird, or creepy, and that's unfair, but even I'm guilty of it. Guys, I've gotten like 20 plus responses and PMs telling me to get fit, wear better clothes, groom myself, etc., etc. Holy crap, guys, I appreciate the tips. I look fine, though. "I found out I'm ugly" was an exaggeration, a joke. Story is true, and the guy who was more attractive than I was more attractive than I, but I'm not Sloth from the Goonies. Geez, no, I don't want to buy your personal trainer service. Why would you even PM me that? Okay, so at first I found the whole "a few months ago I found out that I'm unattractive and it felt pretty bad, TBH. And that was funny. That was funny as hell to me. The part that it's "the other day I found out I am ugly." I don't know why that tickles my ribs though for some reason, but the bit where it's if someone compliments me or flirts with me and I don't find them attractive, it's creepy and weird, everyone thinks it. No, I'm a man. I don't get compliments just all the time, really. If someone wants to compliment me, even if they are a chain-smoking 80-year-old woman who's been smoking since she was 8 and she's all "Well, aren't you a handsome young man?" I will take that compliment and I will even flirt back a little bit. I mean, I literally did this to a Scientologist lady the other day that I was kind of trying to eke out a bit because they were trying to invite me to a goddamn music festival. "Aren't you a handsome young man? Would you like to come to this music festival? They're gonna be chicks as lovely as you there, ma'am." I didn't go, of course, but wouldn't it be funny if I could have gone down that path and got married at the Church of Xenu 10 years down the freaking line? I'll begin by saying this actually happened to me. Anytime a woman claims any form of sexual harassment, the man is automatically guilty and forced to try to prove his innocence, because the company doesn't want a lawsuit. I literally had a female subordinate give me a hug because I let her off early to go to a family function. I came to work the next day and was immediately sent to the boss's boss's boss, where I was advised that I was being put on unpaid leave during a sexual harassment investigation. As it turns out, the entire thing was right under a camera, so you could clearly see her hug me. Even so, I was told that she said I told her to hug me before she got to leave, and then I got fired. Scum behavior, hate it. My knee-jerk reaction, although it's not a perfect answer, is that people who make accusations like this, especially more serious accusations that go to court, if it turns out that it's coming from a place of malice or personal gain and under false pretenses, I think the accusee should be held responsible, or maybe even to a higher standard of responsibility and punished as such if they are found to be lying. But again, that is not a perfect answer to these issues, because then you gotta consider the process in the jury, in the investigation and whatnot, and how things can go wrong, and how actual victims can be left in a destitute situation. I know some of you'll hate it when I go a bit too long on the personal commentary, so I made it nice and short for you, but I'll be back. The employee bathrooms at my job have been scheduled for an update. The work on the men's room started a week or two ago Monday and ended this past Monday morning, during which time the men had to use the public customer bathroom and the women continued to use their employee bathroom. On Monday afternoon, when the work began on the women's room, the newly refurbished, as yet unused by a single man men's room became a temporary women's bathroom, until the work on the new women's bathroom is finished. So the men have to go several weeks without an employee bathroom while the women never have to go a single day without one. Not exactly common, but it otherwise fits the question and is currently on my mind. Well, that is just legitimately unfair.
I'd be scared that those mean old dirty girls will poop in the urinals before I get a chance to.
I mean, pee in the urinals, yeah. I'm a male nurse in the ER, and there are a lot of extra rules I have to follow that the females do not. If I'm doing any kind of perineal care, Foley, straight catch, pelvic, or even rectal temp, on a female patient, I need a female chaperone. However, a female nurse can go do those same procedures on a male without a male chaperone. The looks I get from many elderly patients when I tell them I'm their nurse, those judging eyes. I had a guy straight up laugh in my face and tell me my parents must be embarrassed by me. Mothers freak out when I'm the nurse for their child. I had a lady straight up tell me I couldn't help drain her daughter's armpit abscess because she thought I'd be eyeballing her. No. Literally none of this happens to the female staff members. And frankly, I am a much better nurse than quite a few of them. I think it's been pretty well established there are just jobs where men typically aren't very welcome, or if you are there, you have a lot more rules and regulations that you must follow because of people's discomfort around you. I've just recently noticed something that bugs me a bit. I grew a beard throughout October to December. My girlfriend and all the women on her side of the family were quick to offer their criticism. I didn't really care too much and took it lightly. But after a while, I couldn't help but imagine what it would be like if the tables were turned. Like if my GF started wearing a shirt she just bought and really loved, but my brother, dad, and myself criticized it every time she wore it. That would be messed up, and people would take her side immediately. Talk crap about my choice to grow a bit of facial hair, and no one bats an eye. I feel like this is kind of a straw man argument with the whole if my wife decided to wear a shirt that she loved and I criticized it, then everyone would side with her immediately. Not necessarily. If it's a crap shirt, it's a crap shirt. I don't freaking know, man. I grew a mustache last year for Halloween so I could do a Ron Swanson outfit. I got crap. I didn't give a single crap about what other people thought. Goddamn self-deletion. You want to raise awareness for self-deletion and mental illness? Yeah, fill your boots. But it gets on my frickin' tits when it's all directed towards the struggles women have regarding mental health and self-deletion ideation. And yet the male gender is chastised for anything regarding to ending it early or mental health. The notion of a man to be a strong and mentally powerful individual is a crock. It doesn't define a man. How he deals with it is how it defines him.
True that.
I'm a girl, so I don't know firsthand, so tell me if I'm wrong. I consider it sexist that boys have to be tough and play with Legos and all that crap, even if they want to play with dolls. If their favorite color is hot pink, then that's wrong as well. Growing up, they are not allowed to be emotional, to cry, or to need someone to help them. They can't look for comfort because they have to be manly. Also, in many places in the world and social environments, they are expected to pay for a girl's food, drink, whatever. For her birthday, you should give them something expensive. For what it's worth, it does not happen where I live and in my circle of friends, mostly educated middle-class people, but I can see it all the time. It made sense when women were not working, but now you don't know whether the woman actually makes more in her job than her date, but he's still expected to pay. I don't know about everyone else, maybe I'm just lucky. I mean, there have been times where I've just paid without saying anything, but, I've gone on dates with some pretty considerate women who have offered to pay for their own food and everything. I don't doubt that there are women who can be kind of bratty or insistent that you pay for their meals and all the date and everything, but, I certainly have not come across one like that yet. I was trying to be friendly to a woman during lunch at work. She was literally sat across from me. Mind you, we had been trained alongside one another. So I said hi and asked how she was. She told me that her boyfriend's grandpa died. She said that she got really close to his grandpa. I said that I was really sorry and did my best to empathize. I asked how long her and her boyfriend had been together. She said 4 years and I said congrats. She told me all about her kids and asked me questions about work. Mid-conversation, when she had done most of the talking, she picks up her phone, dials a number. It's her boyfriend, from the sound of it. She says, "Yeah, I was just calling because this guy was being way too friendly. I have no attraction to this person on a sexual level at all. I did not make passes at her, flirt, or anything. In fact, up until then, I had tried to keep it friendly but strictly professional, but she insisted on talking about her family, so I gladly lent an ear. We just had friendly exchanges up until then, and I thought that she wanted to be friends. Apparently, I was wrong. In that moment, I realized that I can't get a date to save my life, or even get a woman that I am attracted to maintain more than a minute or two of conversation with me before writing me off. And yet, I give this woman that I have no interest in the impression that I'm being too friendly when she gave me every reason to believe that she wanted a friend to talk to. F my life. This can go both ways, but yeah, I know some women who are a bit too egotistical for their own good and just kind of assume that anyone approaching them is immediately attracted to or wooed by them in some way. The same thing does happen for guys, but it's usually in a way where it's like, wait, is this girl interested in me? She's like asking me about my hobbies and stuff like that? What's going on here? There's no perfect way to remedy this at this point. It's just a societal norm at this stage, but whatever.
This is for Gen Z and millennials. How hard is it for you to buy a home? The only way I can afford a home at this point is if I buy raw land, harvest and process the trees on it, and build it myself. This is a dream for some people, but in the UK, land is expensive, and we have to buy/import most of our wood because wood foraging is illegal without a license, because of course it is. I can afford the month-to-month mortgage. I cannot, however, afford a down payment. My parents' house's mortgage is like half of the rent in my area. I can afford that, and probably most of the utilities and such by myself. That being said, the price of the house has almost tripled in value since they bought it. I could probably swing the down payment by myself, but it would definitely make me uncomfortable. I honestly feel like I need to get married just to get a house. Here's a detailed example. Wife and I bought our house in 1998 when our first child was born. The house sold for $105,000 and we put $10,000 down. We hadn't done anything major to the home and we cleaned it up in 2007 to secure a refinance to a lower interest rate and get cash to top off a remodel. Appraisal was $180,000. That's value growth fueled fully by the loss of so many independent home builders after the market crash. We brought the kitchen and bathrooms up to modern standards, stone countertops, new cabinets and fixtures, refurbished the wooden floors, added a door off the dining room and a large deck. We got the house appraised in 2021 for $290,000. 2 houses on our street sold for over $300,000 last year, and one of them was in rough shape. Banks here are requiring 30% down for new buyers right now. For my oldest son that is 2 years out of college, he would have to provide a down payment that is nearly as much as we bought the house for 25 years ago. For a 1,000 square foot home, let that sink in. A lot of small construction company owners, the kind that would build small homes, went out of business or retired after the housing crash, and the industry hasn't recovered. This has caused a greater impact to those needing starter homes. Lower supplies means higher prices. On top of that, renting homes is a good source of passive income, so an industry of corporations built specifically to make money off of them and has grown like fungus on a rotting log in this nation. Home values are ridiculous, down payments are ridiculous, and corporate cash offers are desirable for sellers, making the first housing purchase a nightmare for many. Man, I relate to both of these comments so much. I honestly do feel like if I'm ever going to buy a house, I'm going to need a partner to do it. On top of that, I also hate the idea of renting. I understand why people do it, but I've never liked the idea of putting money into something that I will never own. So seeing the crazy amount of money you need for a down payment is soul crushing. Millennial here. All I had to do was marry a girl, buy her a car, help her get her license back, and turn her loose on the streets to get T-boned by a DoorDash driver. That DoorDash insurance payout was $1 million. Profit. Disclaimer, as of last week, I don't live in that house anymore, but that's another story. Wow, this story was basically I made my money the old-fashioned way. I got hit by a Lexus. I prefer a realistic dream, like going to Narnia through my closet. Just be grateful that you have a closet. I'm an old millennial in a nowhere state. Buying our home was insanely easy. They were giving them away. 2 months later, the national housing market began to crash. This was in 2007. We're still here with 13 years to go. I think if we were 25 today, starting over, it would be extremely tough. Kind of the same deal for me. Bought my first in 2009 when the market as a whole was its worst and at the worst time of year for sales to begin with. January closing at the end of February. I did some work to the place and stayed there to 2005 and sold it to make a little profit. The market was probably fair at this point, as it wasn't a buyer's market, but it wasn't a seller's market either. Then bought the house that I'm currently in, and since 2019, watched it double in value. Refinanced in 2021 at an extremely low rate. I honestly couldn't rent a decent apartment in my area right now for what my full payment is. Taxes and insurance included. Plus all utilities cost me a month, and to own a 2-bedroom, 2-bath with a yard and 2-car garage, it's messed up to think about it, but it will be paid off when I'm in my 40s to boot. But I literally can't afford to move at this point. It's sad that people who actually have houses right now can't even leave those houses if they wanted to because the market is so bad. Old millennial here. The only reason I own a house is because my mom and I went in together on a duplex. We decided that this financially made the most sense. She's getting older, so this way I can keep an eye on her too. I did the same thing with my mom back in 2010. We both have health issues that make it a good idea to have another grown-up in the house. Neither of us have a partner. It just made sense to stick together than sit miserably in each of our own tiny apartments. House is 2 floors, top floor is mine, bottom floor is hers, though we usually sit around in the downstairs living room where the computers are set up. It's crazy how many people have assumptions about people still living with their parents at a certain age, but I feel like if you have a family that you actually like, it might be the best option for some right now. I'm early career, just started really. I make $60,000 a year in Canada. I will never be able to afford a house in my lifetime just on this wage, or any wage that I'm likely to see in this field. My only chance is any inheritance I get, or shifting careers like I'm trying to do right now. It's awful and much harder than it should be, but in Edmonton you can find a decent house for about $160,000 to $190,000, which would be about $1,300 to $1,500 per month, including insurance and property tax. That's at 7.5% if you can make a 10% down payment. I know Edmonton is more affordable than other cities, but it's the only market I'm familiar with, and I think Calgary is about 5% more expensive. Just for informational purposes, I have no doubt many Canadian cities are out of reach for most everyone. In the Comox Valley, BC, where there is absolutely nothing but a dumb mountain and an army base, an old trailer in a park is now $270,000 plus. There's flippers everywhere, constantly building, and everything keeps getting more expensive here. It's hell. They don't realize that they've made it so that their kids will never be able to move out. Rooms in houses that morons who, for some reason apparently, thought housing was going to be banned or something, paid too much for their houses. Now they try to rent out single rooms here for more than a freaking Vancouver apartment, and they whine that they have to charge that because it has to be someone else's fault you bought something you can't afford. There are homeless people everywhere here. Wanna guess why? A trailer being over $270,000 sounds insane to me. It was super hard saving up. We aimed to buy a cheap place first and just get onto the ladder. At least that way we were building equity as opposed to paying rent. Average home is almost 7 figures and interest rates are approaching 8% in Canada. Unless you have a dual 6-figure income or live at home with a strong income, the odds of you affording a home near a job center is non-existent. Down payment has to be 20% for anything over $9,999. The cost of buying a home, interest and purchase price, is going up way faster than anyone can grow their actual income. We bought one in 2014 with an FHA loan. Only out-of-pocket cost was $500 for due diligence and around $2,000 for the lawyer. We've refinanced a few times and our mortgage will be about just under $1,300 later this year, when our taxes go up. Still cheaper than a one-bedroom in a place where we won't get murdered. Not getting murdered is a huge selling point when I look for a home. I can't even rent a home. Same. I feel like I'm never going to be able to move past renting a room in a shared house. Elder millennial here. I bought in 2018. Had no cash in hand. Utilized a program from a lender for low/moderate income buyers. Not me. Or those buying in low/moderate income zones. That's me. Required only 5% down. Took a 401k loan for the down payment and closing costs. $160,000 Philly townhome. Mortgage payment even with MPI is less than the rent on my previous 2-bedroom apartment in the same neighborhood. Process was easy, but then again, I'm familiar with it working in banking for 15 plus years. I'd wager the biggest struggle of most millennials and Gen Z is the cash down for payment and closing. To that end, ask for low down payment programs from your lender and hope to God you have some of those money bag boomer relatives that can gift you some cash. Borrowed from my 401k and paid my down payment and closing about 10 years ago. At the time, my monthly was the same as rent I was paying. Today, it's much less. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. However, the 401k loan was really straightforward, and I had a good mortgage broker that helped me understanding a lot of the numbers. I had a younger millennial friend that did a first-time buyer home loan, and that seemed to work for them. I don't really like the idea of paying mortgage insurance, but they didn't have access to a loan. I got lucky with the market timing and had decent credit, and had good work history. I imagine it's a bit crazier/harder right now for people trying for the first time given the validity over the past few years. We kinda lucked into ours. We applied for a rural development loan through the USDA and qualified for $179,900 with a really good interest rate. We had to wait 6 months for it to process and couldn't find the right home in our budget. Then we stumbled upon a home that checked all of our boxes and was owned by a little old lady that just wanted to get it off her hands. Listed at $180,000, a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath on a 1/4 acre. Last I checked, it was estimated to be worth $430,000. Man, I hope one day that I'm in a position just to want to get a house off my hands. I often think I will never buy a home, and if I ever do, it won't be until I'm in my 40s or 50s. From UK here, born in 92, have a family, 2 kids, and a wife. Buying a house seems near impossible with your average income. Current money outgoing on rent/living kills any ability to save enough to get a down payment on the mortgage. I've come to accept that I'm 100% not buying a house anytime soon. It's not how it used to be. As my old man would say, life is a struggle. I always thought life was a highway. An apartment alone these days costs you no less than $1,800 a month. It's extremely difficult. Older millennial, 1983, my mom gave me a little money to make a down payment on a 430 square foot condo in SoCal for $270,000 with PMI. Her thinking was that the market was only going to go up. Of course, 2008 happened. The bottom fell out of the market and I got laid off. Somehow I managed to hold on and after 10 years, finally had enough equity to make a little off the place. My wife and I used it to buy a much more comfortable place in PNW 5 years ago. There were some tough times for sure, but I'm lucky compared to a lot of people. We refinanced in 2020 for a super low rate. I don't know how anyone can afford a mortgage with today's rates. We've been in our house for 5.5 years. An FHA loan and 2 down payment assistance programs through the city got us into it for almost nothing out of pocket. I don't recall the exact numbers now, but we had to put down earnest money, pay inspection, and like $250 at closing. It was under $1,000 when it was all said and done. The problem was finding a house we could afford. We got lucky there. Because my best friend has a friend who at the time was working for the city. After $1 million worth of grants to a developer, all he had to do was sell 1 home to a low-income family. My best friend had to make sure all his contacts knew what we were trying to do. So his best friend referred us and they sold us the house for what we could afford. It was just dumb luck in other words. The house is still in the ghetto, but all the other houses we could afford weren't just in the worst parts of the city, but also falling down. Like for real. One of the houses we looked at was basically missing a floor in one of the rooms. So we consider it a win. I just bought a home. I needed a $50,000 down payment to do it. I won't go into details on how I got that $50,000, but I can damn sure guarantee the average millennial/Gen Z don't have $50K to drop. I'm in the process of buying a luxury cardboard box. Should only take me 45 years to pay it down, but then the sucker's all mine. It's genuinely not a realistic goal for some people who are making an average wage, and not married, or receive a down payment from a family member. It's genuinely hopeless for now, and I'm glad I'm not in the hunt. Just gotta hold out until all the boomers die off. After that, hopefully I can squeeze in somewhere. Boomers dying off isn't going to help if all their homes are swooped up by investors to turn into Airbnbs. Legislation needs to be passed to limit the amount of investment into residential properties for anything to change. This comment right here, I honestly do believe, in America at least, that laws need to be made to limit people from buying up all the property. I believe I read an article about my state that over 50% of homes bought in the last few years were from major companies to be turned into rental properties or Airbnbs. It's pretty disgusting. We bought a house priced just over $100,000 with an FHA loan. Granted, this was back in 2015 when much lower priced homes were easier to find. The total down payment was just under $4K. There were other costs as well, but probably more than $2K from what I remember. We absolutely would not be able to afford the 15 to 20% down payment at that time. No way. We had a little bit of money saved and some money gifted to us when we got married. The house was crappy, but we slowly made improvements over the years. It did end up paying off beyond our wildest dreams when we sold it in 2021 in the super crazy market, and we were able to upgrade substantially. 25-year-old here. Me and my girl live in SoCal where the prices are crazy. It might be another 3 to 5 years until we're able to buy. It's crazy that you guys actually have a trajectory at all. I'm a California native, and the housing's been unbelievable since before the whole nation got its crisis wake-up call over a year ago. I have a few friends that are native to LA and a few that moved there and left. They all say the same thing. It's expensive. My partner and I both make over 6 figures. We live in Seattle, Washington, and we had to look outside the county we both work in to find somewhere we could afford. Got 5% down payment by using our life savings and borrowing from the 401k. I still feel lucky to be an owner with a relatively good loan rate, but it sickens me to think how hard it must be for most, when for us, as a privileged couple, it felt like a risky stretch to get into a $500,000K starter home. 3-bed, 1-bath, built in 1962, with no improvements. Seattle is crazy because 10 years ago things were so cheap. People in tech only wanted to buy East Side or Seattle. Places like Renton and Baltimore were both considered poor or far. Now, these same places are 3x in price and are unaffordable, and even techies are looking farther and farther for affordable housing. I remember when old houses in Bellevue could have been had for $400,000, and Renton houses were like $200K. That was just about 10 years ago in 2013. Have you ever thought it would be cool to go to the moon and how technically it could happen, but you know in all reality you're never going to stand on the moon? It's similar to that. We bought our first house in 2016, and since then it's appreciated $200,000. If we didn't buy when we did, we would still be able to buy, but not nearly the size house we can afford today. Since my wife and I bought in 2012, our house has increased the value by 245%. The appreciation value is great, but I have no idea who could afford a house right now. My wife, 40 female, and I, 38 male, bought our first home last year. It took 20 years together of building credit, building careers, saving cash, and then borrowing $5K to round out our down payment. Oh, and we moved from central Texas to rural eastern New Mexico. Our new property is awesome though. We're thrilled. That is insane that you would have to up and leave your own state to obtain homeownership. What is even crazier is that they had to leave Texas. It only felt like a few years ago that Texas was affordable. I moved back with my grandparents, just started my career and work remote on $30K a year and should have a down payment relatively soon for anything less than $130K. I live in the Midwest and I'm looking for smaller houses that don't cost an average of $500,000. My wife and I bought our house in 2016. We live in the South and it is a 3-bedroom home for under $200K. So I know the likelihood of something like that nowadays is crazy. It wasn't too bad, saved for a year or so, and since we were first-time home buyers, there were lots of programs I qualified for that saved us money in the closing costs. The hardest part was we were moving states and didn't have jobs locked in yet, but we were able to get it pushed through. What bank approved a mortgage for a couple with no jobs? That loan officer must have been off their meds that day. You got extremely lucky on that. Very young millennial/early Gen Zer here. I got a condo for $150K in a decent location. Average per capita income is $51,000, 3% poverty rate. For some general metrics, built in 2021, it was a lot of hunting, and the house is a 2-bedroom, but everything is spacious. It's by no means a beautiful house, but it's not run down either. Down payment wasn't too bad for me. There was ways to incorporate it into the loan. I forgot what that phrase was though. I would need a bank clerk to mistakenly add at least 2, ideally 3, zeros to the end of my account total and never notice. Like ever. I tried the loan route and it wasn't impossible with what little I had. That's what the bank told me anyways. I had planned on buying a shell of a home from the Amish and building the rest myself on my parents' land, but an opportunity plopped into my lap a year ago. My house was built in the mid-late 1800s and has been abandoned for 8 to 10 years before I got there. The previous tenant was nearly 100 and couldn't make it upstairs anymore and went into assisted living. Her children are in their 70s and didn't feel like doing anything with it, so the town obtained ownership of it. It ended up selling for $20,000, and the taxes last year was like $280 for the house and an acre or so of land. I'm slowly repairing/rebuilding things every couple of months with whatever money I have saved up. I've fixed the plumbing, electrical, roof, and several other issues that have been taken care of since I started. The spring project is the root cellar and rebuilding the cellar door along with some gardening prep. I like my process, but it certainly wouldn't be for everyone. It was full of rodents, ticks, used substances, and looting debris before I got there. Luckily, the bones were in good shape besides a few things I had to replace. 3 or 4 full roll-off dumpster containers later, and it's starting to make the situation not as worse every single day. In popular areas, impossible. In the Midwest, it's not that bad. I can get a decent starter home in a decent city pretty cheap here. The only problem is, it's the Midwest. My wife and I may be able to afford a mortgage on the cheapest home we could find, but we have about $400 to $500 between the both of us right now and definitely don't have enough to make a down payment. We live paycheck to paycheck. Average houses where I live go for around $200K, so it's not completely unobtainable. I gave up on the idea of home ownership like 10 years ago. I bought a house a little over a year ago. I'm a 38-year-old millennial. My credit score was on the high side of average or the low side of good, 700-ish, which is a whole thing to get on its own, but I was lucky in a lot of ways. I was shopping for homes in the 100K range because I'm a cheapskate, but there wasn't any good ones anywhere I wanted to live, which included a lot of places, some of which were quite far apart. So I gave up and started looking for places to rent. Turns out places to rent are awfully expensive too, so I went back to the housing market with a higher budget. Found a nice 1920s craftsman style home that was on the market for about $165,000. Real estate agent told me to offer $10K above because the market is crazy, but I offered $5K over instead. Offer accepted, had them do the inspections, and the owners were super helpful in fixing the things the inspector cited. Went to the bank and they were real helpful until they weren't. They wouldn't accept my pay card from my work for down payment money because they just didn't vibe with that company. They wouldn't accept Credit Karma cards that I had my tax returns on. They wouldn't accept cash because maybe I was a bad evil drug dealer. My father is a family practice physician and he was able to front the money and I just ended up paying him, which I recognize to be a privilege hardly anyone has. Huge obstacle. Be forewarned, you might want to put your money in a nice boring bank well before you start buying, or the banks will invent some obstacles for you.
People who have surprisingly woken up admitted into hospital. What happened? I hopped into the back of a mate's pickup after a rugby game, went to sleep and woke up in ICU in traction with no feeling from my waist down. Turns out we had a head-on collision with a drunk driver and I went through the back of the cab picking up a host of broken body parts including 4 compressed vertebrae. A year and a number of surgeries later, I walked out of hospital an inch shorter and with enough metal in me to set off metal detectors at airports. I was the lucky one. The other 3 guys in the truck never woke up afterwards. 20 years and it still gets me. The accident happened in Zimbabwe, where I grew up. I've traveled a fair bit since then, but I'm now a bona fide Kiwi. I didn't find out about the others for a while. Aside from being zonked on pain meds, I don't think I was capable of understanding what had happened. Visitation was restricted in the ICU to my folks, but the day after I was moved out, most of the 2 senior teams and some of the staff pitched up to tell me the nasty truth. The tiny ward was crammed with big, burly, ugly guys crying their hearts out, and I loved every one of them for it. Not sure where I was going with this, but I've ended up here Here's a thought from an old guy with a messed up body who walks with a constant limp, has tried every legal and many non-legal relief options for the daily thrum of pain, who has had 2 decades of survivor's guilt, and who knows firsthand the debris that is left behind when someone is tragically and unceremoniously yanked from life, their family, and their friends. If you're not 100% in control, don't put the key in the ignition. Don't put yourself in harm's way, and don't risk messing up someone else's life. Call a cab, take a bus, walk, but for Christ's sake, don't drive. I think he covered everything that I felt like saying about this topic. 18-year-old me got super wasted on Smirnoff watermelon vodka at some little club in Clearwater, Florida. Apparently, I fell off a bar stool and busted my head. When I woke up, I wasn't even sure what state I was in. I accidentally called my friend's mom in North Dakota trying to get a ride to somewhere other than the hospital. A decade later, and I still can't drink anything with that watermelon flavor. I get that feeling, not with artificial watermelon flavors. I love that in sweets, in drinks, whatever. I absolutely love it. The actual fruit watermelon, kind of mid, not gonna lie. But I can't drink sours with a Z. It's a drink. It's disgusting to me now. I was 12 in 1982, woke up in a hospital bed feeling fine, no idea what happened, nobody else in the room. Last person I remember hanging out with was my friend, Scott. So I call his house, his mom answered, advised me to call my parents. No answer at the home phone. So I'm sitting in this bed trying to figure out why I'm even here. I finally discover that the rolling table over the bed opens up and there's a mirror under the lid. Across my forehead and down the whole right side of my face are fresh abrasions. Oh. That's why. Finally, get a hold of Scott and learn the story, which I still don't remember. Was riding my bike down a sidewalk near the grade school. Sidewalk takes a 45-degree left turn and I cut the corner. Grass is deep and a little wet and my front wheel catches the edge of the sidewalk, flipping me over. I landed on my face, dragging against the other edge of the sidewalk, knocked out cold. Another neighborhood kid was in the area, hustled back to alert my parents. My dad took me to the hospital in his car and I woke up the next day. Yes, my parents just left me in the hospital by myself. Waking up in hospital on your own as a kid would absolutely suck. I mean, I remember being admitted to hospital for, I won't go into it, but, it does suck. Hospitals just suck. Was at the pool. Next thing I know, I wake up in a hospital bed, feeling very cold and my throat hurts. Turns out I had actually drowned, but the lifeguard had pulled me out and reanimated me for about 45 minutes. Then I was flown to the hospital by helicopter where I lay in a coma for 2 days, during which they kept my body temperature low to prevent cerebral damage caused by lack of oxygen. I could go home a week after the accident. The way they described the lifeguard reanimating them, I'm picturing like a necromancer or something. My brother and I were outside playing with squirt guns. This was 2001, so I would have been 11. Next thing I know, it's Easter Sunday. I was in a hospital bed with a massive headache and blurred vision, and the last thing I remembered was 4 days ago. Apparently, I fell backwards and smacked my dome on the curb hard enough to fracture my skull and bruise my brain. Got 2 weeks off school, which was cool back then, and I've had to wear glasses ever since. Apparently, according to my mom, the first sign of consciousness in the hospital was me getting out of bed, taking a whiz on the floor, and then going back to sleep for 2 more days. The whole thing was a weird experience. Being in hospital in general, especially when you're freaking 11 years old or something and all alone, would suck. I understand why it would be a weird experience. I was running a half marathon with a friend and we had just passed the 10-mile mark and I felt like I was getting into a groove after I struggled a bit the previous few miles. Woke up the next day in the ICU with my family all around me. Heat stroke plus rhabdomyolysis. I was admitted with a temperature of 108.6 and they were telling my family to prepare for the worst. I had to stay in hospital for a few days and then take it easy for a few months, but otherwise came out unscathed. Don't recommend it. Rhabdomyolysis, often called rhabdo, is a serious medical condition that can be fatal or result in permanent disability. Rhabdo occurs when damaged muscle tissues release its proteins and electrolytes into the blood. These substances can damage the heart and kidneys and cause permanent disability or even death. And that's what rhabdomyolysis is. Woke up in the hospital with my roommate and her mom asleep in the chairs in the room. I started freaking out because I was 7 months pregnant and my pregnant belly was obviously not pregnant. My screaming woke them up. My fiancé and I had been hit by a drunk driver. killing my fiancée, and I lost the baby. I had been in a coma for 3 days. I have some really gnarly scars that my kids like to make up crazy stories about. My favorite being the time I fought off 3 knife-wielding psychotic carnies and murdered them with my bare hands. Well, you know what? I'm glad there was a semblance of a happy ending for this lady. I was 16 and hit by a Ford F-350. I am a tiny human, I'm under 5 foot, and this truck hit me going 40 miles per hour when I was in the crosswalk. The hit launched me across the entire intersection. I don't remember anything 20 minutes before until 10 days later. When I finally woke up, I had been in a coma for 5 days. Both my lungs had collapsed, I had 3 blood transfusions, a chest tube to drain the internal bleeding, 3 surgeries, and the whole left side of my body broken. I couldn't walk and my vision and memory had been damaged. It's been 6 years and I'm doing great now. You wouldn't even know anything happened to me except I have memory issues and arthritis. But I like to think I came out on top in this situation. I think they did as well. I was at a party with a friend in some college town. The street we were on had these 3-story apartments built side by side. The whole street was partying, even on the roofs. We got separated and it was time to go. We don't live in that town. Anyways, I see an ambulance going down the street and I knew it was for my idiot roommate. So I follow the ambulance and sure enough, he was laying on the ground barely conscious. He tried to jump from one building to the next and didn't even come close. Luckily for him, his head broke the fall. A few weeks later, he finally asked, "Oh yeah, hey man, that night we went to Lawrence and I woke up in hospital. What happened?" Yes, it was Lawrence, Kansas. I don't know the street. It was 2001 or 2002. Yes, he did have a concussion. He was fully unconscious for a couple minutes and everybody thought he was dead. They said he was laying there with his eyes open, unresponsive. It wasn't until someone dumped a bottle of water on him that he was roused into a semi-conscious state. Other than having chronic headaches for a month, he was fine. Glad everything worked out, but what a stupid prick. Woke up in the hospital, too weak to press a PCA pump, being told I'd been in a catastrophic motorcycle accident. Had suffered extensive injuries to my entire, except my left arm, spine, and head, thank the universe, body, and had been in a medically induced coma for 5 weeks. I lost any memory of the event or the week prior to it. I was hit by some unrepentant doucheburgers who were out on parole, repeat offenders, and decided it would be a great idea to assault a 7-Eleven clerk, rob the store, and lead the police in a 30-minute chase at excess speeds up to 100 plus. Their joyride ended when they went the wrong way on the freeway and took my on-ramp going 70 miles per hour against the traffic and slammed into me at a net speed of 120 miles per hour. I was going 50. We know all this from the police report. I never had a chance since the on-ramp sloped up, then back down to enter the freeway and I hit these guys at the crest of the hill. Never saw them. The impact sliced through their engine block so they ran on foot after that. The police recorded their statements after being followed by helicopter and being apprehended as, "What you arresting me for?" They got 9 and 5 years in a plea deal and I was notified when they were each let out after serving less than half the sentence. Please note they were 100% sober, knew they hit me, and they left me to die. I'm a generally compassionate person, or at least I try to be, but I hope their lives are a living hell and that they live a long time. I hope they never get the chance to hurt someone again, but I fully expect that that's what they've done. For my own mental health, I'll never try to find out what's become of them. This was over 10 years ago and I have a good life now. Loving GF, a mortgage, a super smart border collie, everything I ever wanted, although it's been a serious struggle. I didn't get any money except for $50K from the Victims of Violent Crimes Fund, plus, remarkably, their auto insurance. My medical bills were $3 million plus, but I was insured, thankfully, since I just started the job 6 months prior. I used that money in my hospital/recovery time to get my MBA and have worked hard as hell to move up in my new career since I knew I had to change. I'm not very agile anymore. I'm still severely and permanently disabled. I'll never run again, nor have any real balance. I need a cane and lost the use of my dominant arm. But I'm lucky since I still have my faculties and look relatively normal. I don't own a motorcycle anymore and will never attempt to ride again. You need 100% of your physical faculties as well as mental to do it safely. I don't blame my motorcycle at all. I miss riding and probably wouldn't have fared much better in those speeds in a car. If you ride and are reading this, please make sure you buy the best safety gear and wear it every time. I'm only here today because I did, and no amount of skill would have saved me from being in the exact wrong place at the exact wrong time. I was wearing a Nolan flip-face helmet, $300 at the time. Thank you, Nolan, for your outstanding quality and commitment to safety. I still have the helmet, and it's scratched and cracked all the way through. That could have been my skull. I agree with your sentiment. Screw those guys, but I do believe you would have fared a lot better in a car. Wife, 2-year-old son, and myself went to visit a couple of friends out in the country. Had some food, had a couple of drinks myself, had an amazing time. Wife was sober. I was wrangling my young one back into his car seat to go home. He was so overtired and unhappy, but I made sure he was good and snug, and pulled out of the driveway after waving goodbye to our friends. I came to almost a month and a half later. I could barely move my legs and arms due to the neuropathy and fatigue. I had a feeding tube up my nose and a colostomy bag. The doctors told me that I had actually come to a couple days before while I was still in intensive care, but the nature of the anesthetic they had me on meant I kept kinda waking up, fading back, and forgetting everything. At this point, I was able to remember things normally. They told me right off the bat my son was fine, completely unharmed and in the care of a very old and dear friend with 3 kids of his own already. My wife was alive and relatively uninjured with the exception of some damage to her leg and a moderate brain injury that she would recover from slowly. They kept the details about the accident from me for a few weeks while I was recovering, but basically my wife missed a stop sign in the middle of a dark, poorly marked country road and we got T-boned by an SUV. Other driver was fine. It's been over 2 years since the accident. I got the strength back to walk again, but because of pins, bolts, plates in my left ankle and shin, I'll never likely be able to run again. The neuropathy in my legs wore off and eventually wore off in my arms to the point where I can use them normally again, but it was a lot of therapy retraining them. Suffered PTSD about 10 months after by the time I was back at home. From time to time, I still have nightmares about something that I don't technically have the ability to remember. That is just downright scary. Smash cut to a month and a half later and you don't remember anything, but you're getting PTSD-driven nightmares about it? Not me, but my girlfriend's sister jumped out of a window Tuesday morning. She's schizophrenic, so there's other issues there besides just trying to self-delete. She's still sedated and hasn't woke up. Broken vertebrae in neck and lower back, but they don't think she's paralyzed. Slight bleeding on the brain that they're relatively sure didn't cause damage. Busted ribs and torn up lungs they had to remove part of yesterday in surgery. Some other broken bones, etc. They have her sedated/unconscious to prevent her from moving due to the broken vertebrae. I wonder if she'll be disappointed when she wakes up later in the week. On the plus side, her parents are having a Cambodian guy come in to do an exorcism, so that's going to fix everything. Love her, but her parents are something else. Old school Vietnamese. Maybe this is just me, but I imagine she was exceedingly disappointed when she woke up. Snowshoeing, and by snowshoeing I mean a short, slow trip on a relatively flat, groomed trail because I in no way represent an athlete. Finished the trip and am standing on the edge of a parking lot looking over Lake Tahoe from Echo Summit. Next to me, 2 guys are filming some sort of ski ad, I assume. One guy skis down the cliff, hits a mogul, does a somersault, and then somehow stops to climb back up and repeat. Guy 2 is filming. Skier guys may be covering about a football field distance over and over again. It's a cliff and he acts about like he's getting up during an ad to get a soda from the TV. Ski, mogul, flip, stop, up, repeat. I enjoy the view and muse on the comparison between my pathetic activity and this guy's and think, okay, time to go. I immediately fall on the ground and can hear my wrist snap as it's caught in the strap on my ski pole. Get up, walk painfully back to my car, a quarter mile, curse all the families driving erratically and allowing their children to careen around the snow play park. I'm a little grumpy with the pain, then realize I can't get my keys out of my pants pocket. Ask a woman who looks like a mum to help. She steps into that extremely uncomfortable, intimate distance and reaches her hand deep into my disgusting pocket and fishes out my keys. It was very awkward. I thank her profusely and to this day will bless her and wish that she and her descendants may people the earth. Drive to Barton Hospital for a temporary cast. Drive home. It's not easy driving with one arm and it's no doubt illegal, but I made it. I have another equally exciting story about a broken and dislocated shoulder from a bike ride. Doesn't exactly fit the criteria of this topic, but it was a nice shake-up, I suppose. I remember parts where the paramedics were taking me to the hospital in the ambulance, asking me about a 666 tattoo I had and something about how one of their sisters also attempted self-deletion. But I lost consciousness again before I could say I didn't remember even thinking about self-deletion. I woke up in the hospital and apparently I drank way too much and my dad found me unconscious. Everyone thought I tried to delete myself because I was alone, so it took a while before they just let me go without being taken to a psych ward. I was actually pretty depressed, and now I wonder if I was trying to die. I just feel bad about apparently throwing up on my cat before anyone found me. My dad said she was meowing next to me until someone came home. Not gonna lie, I almost lost it when they mentioned that they threw up on their cat. But I also have to commend that cat for its level of loyalty. TLDR, woke up from a coma with fungal pneumonia, spent about 76 days in CCU, had left lung removed. I might have a story that fits in here. Happened about 3.5 years ago. I'd been kind of sick with the flu for a few weeks. Couldn't seem to shake it. I'd get a little better, then a bit worse. This was right before Christmas 2012. That year, Christmas Eve and Christmas was on a Monday and Tuesday. So I was just pushing myself to get to that sweet 4-day weekend, thinking I'd just relax and that'd get me past it. So I rested hard all weekend, wasn't eating much, just stayed in the easy chair. The day after Christmas, I still wasn't feeling up for work. I was still at my folks' house for the holiday, so my mom being my mom was all, if you're too sick to work, you're going to the doctor. I didn't have insurance at the time, so I hadn't been. Went to one of those urgent care places instead. I was there for a little while, don't remember much around this point. I remember we left after a while, then waking up in CCU about 12 to 14 days later. Turns out I have the beats. Now, I hear from a lot of people that this is how they find out they are diabetic, either very low blood sugar or you go into DKA and get flu/pneumonia. This is where my story takes a house-like turn. Most of the following info I got secondhand after the fact. When leaving the urgent care place, apparently my mother had been told to take me straight to the ER. She got me to the closest one and they took me right in. Didn't even wait on the paperwork. They knew right away about the DKA and pneumonia, but something else was wrong. They did MRIs, ran blood tests, checked for strokes, heart attack, about everything. Something was still off and they didn't know what. I went into respiratory failure that evening and they had to put me in a coma and on life support. They sent the blood to the labs. Now, in-house, they get results back in a few hours and try something else, then run another test and try something else. I'm not sure how accurate that is for most situations. In my case, they had determined there was an abnormal kind of infection in or in addition to the pneumonia. The culture had to grow for 10 days for them to see what was in my blood to make a solid diagnosis. So the data came back and the infectious disease doctors working on me spent several days poring over everything she could find to learn what it was. She found a picture in an old textbook of a fungus called rhizopus. Once they figured this out, they were able to find a medicine that could treat it, though it'd be a 13-week course of intravenous treatment and it was highly toxic just for kicks. So they pulled me off the sedation after 10 days and it took me a few days to wake up. Apparently, they told my folks to start planning my funeral, so that's creepy. When I woke up, they started the treatments the next day. I wasn't out of the woods yet though. After I woke, the pulmonary doctor did a brachioscope to see my lungs. She said they looked like they were full of pink fluff, like cotton candy or pink marshmallow fluff. That was on Wednesday, January 9th, 2013. She did another scope that Friday and said it looked less inflamed, so that was great news. And she said she'd do another on Monday. The weekend passes. She comes back and runs another. This time, when she put the tube in, apparently a sweet odor was released immediately. My mom says she said, "Do you smell that? Something smells sweet." My right lung looked even better. My left lung, well, she said looked black and green and spiky, so that's a bad thing, I guess. The lung had begun to die. This is a part I remember for myself really clearly. I woke up from that procedure and the nurse told me to wait a moment and left the room. She came back with the pulmonary doctor, a surgeon, and my mom and dad. Oh gee, mom and dad have been crying but are smiling through it. That's not a good sign. The surgeon explained what they found and said we pretty much have two choices. We can do surgery and remove your left lung, and you have about a 50-50 chance of surviving, or we can keep you on the medicine and do everything else we can for you. Now, even being all doped up and half asleep, I knew that meant praying for a miracle and making me comfortable while I died. Now, I'm a Christian. I have faith in miracles and such, but I also believe one of the greatest things we have as a species is a brilliant and curious mind that has led to such things as music, art, bacon, and medicine. So I'd be a fool, in my opinion, to ignore the advice and help of the fine doctors and nurses in front of me. And to be honest, I remember thinking to myself in that moment, I've never had a major surgery. It'll be interesting if I come through. So I wrote surgery on the little marker board I had since I couldn't speak. I had surgery the next morning where they removed my full left lung long. Afterwards, I remained in CCU for a total of 76 days, 99 days total in the hospital. I still had to run the full 13-week course of that medicine. I had a lot of rehab and therapy for months after. A lot of it dealing with the extensive muscle atrophy in my legs and arms and pretty much everywhere. 3 years later, I've much improved. I lost a bit of mobility in my feet, both from the atrophy and the diabetic neuropathy. My stamina isn't what it was, obviously, as my oxygen capacity is about 55% of what it was, we think. At rest, I still can hit about 95 to 97% blood saturation, which is normal. At moderate to heavy activity, it drops pretty fast. Still working on improving that. Got a good job, got a girl. Overall, things are actually a lot better than it was before. Nothing like almost dying to spice up your life. I feel like I emphasized the fine doctors and nurses a bit too much. It made it sound like they're all kinda sexy. Like everyone else on here, I'm glad things mostly worked out and there was no loss of human life in these. I can only imagine what it would be like to just wake up and it's like, oh damn, like what happened to me? It'd be very interesting, of course, but it'd be scary as hell. Actually, on that note, I do remember being in hospital, going under anesthetic, and then waking up like 2 days later or something. Of course, in comparison to a lot of people on here, that is absolutely nothing.
Medical professionals of Reddit, what is the worst hookup-related injury you've seen at your workplace? Exotic special ordered venomous spider placed where the sun don't shine. Guy called an ambulance because he wasn't sure if he could put bug bite cream up there. As the packaging said, for external use only. Lost entire traverse section of necrotic bowel. They lived, but they poop in a bag now. At first I thought, how crazy do you have to be to do that? But then I instantly thought, I'm gonna be sus of people that like spiders from now on. Mini lava lamp stuck in the rectum. Power cord was sticking out like a tail. Mini lava lamp stuck in a rectum? Sounds like a Card Against Humanity's card. Did you try unplugging it and then plugging it back in? Broken pee-pee. Dude's testes were the size of grapefruits. I assumed the internal artery was pumping blood into them from somewhere. Wasn't MA then, now in med school. It was a neat injury, but nothing we could do for him at the urgent care. He needed surgery for sure. Did see a bottle stuck up in a bum x-ray as well. I'm not one to judge. Keep on freaking on. But don't put glass up your bum, please. Anyone who's had the misfortune of watching One Man, One Jar in the mid-2000s knows better. Childhood memory unlocked. Countless cases of stuff stuck you know where. Pee-pee sticks, lady toys, cucumbers, toilet bowl brushes. If it's possible to get it in there, then someone's needed it surgically removed. Toilet bowl brush was the most shocking. However, the funniest was reconstructing a giant white, oddly realistic, veiny looking pee-pee on the back table to make sure they had pulled it all out. Pro tip, if you get something stuck up there, don't make up some fantastical story about unclothed light bulb changing. We know how it got there. You know how it got there. There's no shame in liking that stuff. Just tell us your personal time went awry. It would be kind of funny if a doctor did believe those wild stories and then was like, man, I never thought that could happen. I used to work weekend night shifts. Had a young girl come in one weekend. Despite her age, she had a hip replacement and it was dislocated. ER put it back in and she went on her way. Next weekend, she's back again. Same thing. Third weekend in a row, and there she is. Finally, I ask what she's doing to dislocate her hip so much, and she says her boyfriend keeps bending her leg back too far while they hook up. I told her to try different positions. Talk about not caring about your partner's well-being. Dude stuck a pencil up his urethra. What is porous? It got stuck. For a day. He couldn't pee around it, and initially, that's what his complaint was, urinary retention. Finally, in the exam room, when the doc asked him what the freak, with the eraser sticking out of his pee-pee, the guy finally fessed up. He ended up needing surgery. He was also like 70 years old enough to know better. Damn, in his 70s and still being a freak? You go, Grandpa. Uncle-in-law, who's an anesthesiologist, had a patient come in that had poured concrete in his bum while trying to make a custom pee-pee stick. They had to chisel the concrete out of his bum. Excuse me, he did what now? Back in medical school, I was on a surgery rotation with a classmate. Our first day, we got split into groups. By chance, my first case was an appendectomy. His first case was helping deliver a jewel-encrusted pee-pee stick from the bum of a 250-pound guy. He was at the business end when it crowned and was responsible for catching as the surgeon pushed from above. Gives a new meaning to the terms pitch and catch. Worked at a physical therapy clinic for years. 78-year-old man came in with a herniated disc in his neck after satisfying his girlfriend. He was a longtime patient and friend of the therapist, so we got the whole story. Our patient, P, was old, rich, and single, and loved all the sleazy bits that came with it. One day, his 39-year-old girlfriend asked him to return the favor, so P goes to town for the first time ever at age 78. Not really knowing what he was doing, he went at her like a dog drinking water, his words. A few moments later, he felt a pop and his arm went numb. He came to us with a nearly useless left arm about 2 days later. My boss was laughing so hard during the eval that I went into the treatment room to check on him. P insisted I stay and hear the whole story. P died a couple months later from something unrelated. I miss that crusty old bastard a lot. Wait a minute, for the first time at 78, Mr. P? Come on now, don't be selfish like Mr. P, everyone. Also, he died a few months later. Anybody else kind of thinking it's a little suspicious? A janitor heated up petroleum jelly and injected it into his pee-pee with a syringe. He was trying to make it bigger. He kept adding more. Another janitor saw him and decided to do the same. So it turns out, with nowhere to go, petroleum jelly forms granulomas under the skin, which gets infected. Word was the tip of his thing and the base wouldn't work anymore, only the middle, and abscesses formed, resulting in what was described as the pee-pee looking like, and you might want to brace yourself for this, maggots had burrowed tunnels through it. Janitor 1 was hospitalized for several weeks. As for Janitor 2, he ended up with several ulcerating wounds in his pelvic region. You could stick a finger in them. They were that big. Apparently injecting your thing with petroleum jelly is fairly common. Some girls have also attempted to inject this in their chesticles to give themselves implants. It has led to deaths because bits and pieces of it can dislodge and travel to your lungs. First off, ew. Secondly, I think it's important to say that many people in the world are not happy with their bodies, so I would suggest therapy to get help with that issue. And after that, if you still want to improve your body, at least seek out a medical professional. Typically not a medical professional, but I have a friend who was a hospital pharmacist. He said a patient came in with a coffee thermos in his bum. Cap first. He got the rest of the thermos out, but the cap stayed. After a couple of days, he finally decided to go to the hospital because he couldn't get it out. The cap ended up festering bacteria, and he had to have part of his colon removed. Now the guy is in his 30s with a colostomy bag. I've seen a crystal clear imprint of a clothing iron to the bum. The thought process was something like, if candle wax equals kinky, iron equals mega kinky? I don't know. Also, a pair of junkies got wasted and shot a substance in one of the guy's members, and we had to fillet the whole thing. He was distraught about the size difference after. This is why you shouldn't do substances, kids. Makes your member smaller. I had a patient come into the ER with runs of VTAC, dangerous arrhythmia, because his boyfriend sprinkled substance powder on a pee-pee stick and used it on him. It's very absorbent up there, and suddenly your heart is crapping out at the rate of 220 beats per second. Kinda hookup related? On Andrews Air Force Base in the 1980s, a guy was caught doing bad things to a family member. As the cops arrived, he sat on the front concrete steps and hammered his junk off. My mom worked on him in the emergency room. He still ended up in jail. Well, at least he gave himself more justice than the court system would. 18-year-old kid had a cheap pee-pee stick break way up in his bum, was bleeding and needed surgery. In my state, you're not legally an adult until 19, so he had to call his mom for consent, and she demanded staying with him through his entire ER visit. If you want the details, it was probably 7 to 9 inches of plastic. Top 2 inches are what broke off. Also, yes, the medical consent rules are screwy. Applies to SA as well, unless the parent was the suspected assailant. Not my story, but my mom's. She used to work in the oncology department at her hospital a while back. One day she came home, sits me down and says, "Syphilis in the eye. You always make sure your partner is clean. Don't take their word for it. I don't care what you do, just syphilis in the eye." That's all I needed to hear. Labia hematoma. Couple had hookup time, then got into a fight. He kicked her in the crotch. This bursted a blood vessel in the labia, which made it swell to the size of a large pear. That crap hurts. She used many colorful words to describe what she thought of him. My friend works at an ER in a small rural area in Canada. Apparently, this young guy comes in and has a can of Axe body spray stuck up his rectum. He was extremely embarrassed, and his excuse was that he accidentally sat on it. The crazy thing about this story is that I bet if the dude farted, you probably wouldn't be able to tell if it was him or the Axe body spray. A guy came into the emergency department because his bum hurt after his boyfriend, how do you say, put his whole hand up there, he had torn his bowel and had to get a colostomy. It wasn't life-ending or anything, but imagine going to the ED after hooking up and getting told that you're getting a freaking colostomy. I had a woman in her 50s that had her boyfriend do the same thing, while they had recreationally taken muscle relaxers. She apparently was really into it and wanted him to be rougher with her. Then he pulled his arm out and noticed that there was blood everywhere. He called for an ambulance and she had a significant bowel tear. She had surgery and also got a colostomy, and several complications post-op and ended up on a ventilator long-term, unable to wean. Her grown children didn't know what caused it. The boyfriend was very attentive and stayed by her side. He was very nice, and I know he had to be dealing with some guilt. Eventually, her prognosis was so poor that they withdrew life support and she died. Every time I had conversations with her boyfriend, I noticed how huge his fists and forearms were. My dark sense of humor is telling me to make a joke, but in all seriousness, people do need to be more careful with what they take/use during hookup time. Nothing worse than pee-pee sticks, lady toys, and other objects stuck where the sun don't shine. One chap did say that he likes sticking things up there, and that's fair enough, but the strange excuses are usually the most entertaining part of it. Worst genital injury was some guy who drilled his junk with the cordless drill doing DIY. Don't secure your workpiece between your knees if you want to be sure to keep both testicles, gentlemen. I was actually reading an article about kink-friendly medicine today, and how much of a shame it is that there's so much stigma. All the kinksters agree that they should be open with their doctors, but most are not, and many will use urgent cares instead of their primary care due to reporting issues of judging by their practitioners. It causes real health issues. I'm still embarrassed about having to explain to my insurance that I both ran my car off an icy road and also got flogged so hard I had to stop because my spine hurt in the same week. So I couldn't really tell which one caused my back injury. They wanted to send it to my car insurance company. Oh, and they called during work hours, of course. I would have busted out laughing if I heard my coworker telling their insurance that they got their back blown out and needed to file a claim. Infected penile implant. His member looked like a purple tall boy beer can. They had to take him to the OR, literally filleted his man parts, take out the implant, and wash it all out. Worst part is they left him open for several days. Ick. I've actually read that men that get penile implants, it's not guaranteed that your junk works after. I think I'd rather have my stuff work than it looking better. But hey, to each their own. My mother worked in the ER and told me a story about a guy who was wasted on fairy dust and couldn't get it up. His friend told him to stick a chicken bone in his pee-pee and he would be able to hook up. He shoved the chicken bone in knuckle first and it shredded the tip of his pee-pee. A coworker was getting divorced. One night, his soon-to-be ex called about something and she could tell he was having a bad day. So to cheer him up, she had told him about how while she and her new boyfriend were hooking up, he shoved a pee-pee stick up her bum and it got stuck. After failed attempts to remove it, they went to the ER and she had to get surgery. After surgery, doctor sanitized it and gave it back to her. And in case you want to know, the story didn't make him feel better. How can any sane person think telling your ex about your new partner and you hooking up would ever be a good story to tell them? Does it count if I saw it prior to the doctor? Did some AV work for a friend of mine that managed a swing club. He was hooking up with some girl on this sort of rolling gurney/bed out in the middle of the lounge area, with like 50 plus people enjoying the show. They accidentally slid off the bed and in the jumble and ensuing thump to the ground, an audible pop was heard. He fractured his member. That pop that was heard was the poor guy's junk. Almost immediately it looked like a deflated purple balloon. This was many years ago now, and you can rest assured that I never let old broken pee-pee forget. Hey, what are best friends for, right? My family is constantly in and out of the local ER. Last time I went there for a concussion, there was a man in there with his wife for heart palpitations during hookup time. He started having a slow heart attack while they were doing the deed, and they ended up admitting him. There was also a girl in there, wasted out of her mind, claiming she hooked up with multiple different guys, like 3 or 6, and had gotten pregnant from all of them. But then her friends had kidnapped her and had given her a particular brownie with stuff in it, but she didn't know what kind of stuff. And the brownie made her lose her baby, and now she was dying. According to the conversation the doctor kept having with her, she had come in 3 times in that month claiming she was pregnant and worried about her baby. Each time they tested and all the tests came back negative. She started her period and it caused her to insist that she had lost the multiple men's baby. And it was the fault of the brownie she had in San Diego 3 days ago. She started wailing when they gave her some meds to calm her down, claiming that they were killing her baby with injections, and that she would call up her friends who kidnapped her and force her to eat the deadly brownie as proof. I'm not sure what ended up happening to her and her apparent psychotic break, but I'm hoping that they got her some help because she was clearly out of it. Dentist here. In dental school, definitely saw a girl with an inflamed palate that was worried about an infection. Did some tests, nothing looked infectious. Faculty member pulls me aside and was like, yeah, that's a bruise from a certain type of action if you catch my drift. Might not be a major injury, but definitely memorable. We actually learned/saw this in oral pathology class. It can happen because of continuous trauma to the palate. Just like you get a bruise on your arm with continuous hits, even if they aren't too hard. I'd recommend swishing with a saltwater rinse a couple times a day for a few days to help with the swelling, and maybe take a break until it heals. I'm sure AV stars know all the best health tips for these types of injuries. Dissected vertebral artery from a mouth hookup, essentially a big brain hemorrhage. Did not end well either. My mom is a secretary at a hospital, so she had heard a few stories. Apparently a person had come in with a carrot stuck up their bum. Says it got stuck up there because he fell on it while they were cooking without clothes. I'd like to take this moment to thank everyone in this thread for making sure my genitalia never works again. Was working an ER rotation at a major DC hospital while getting my EMT. I wasn't around at the onset, but a gentleman came in complaining of swelling down there, and a nurse gave him a cursory look. She immediately took him into a private room, closed the door, and came over to tell us what was going on. The guy apparently liked to feel weight on his junk when he had personal time. He had put his junk through the center of a 5-pound weight plate, like you would when you do free weights. He did his business and then fell asleep. 5 hours later, he woke up swollen and unable to pull himself out of the weight. So he had somehow taken public transportation, or walked, with the 5-pound weight plate in his pants all the way to the hospital. We spent the next 30 minutes trying to reduce the swelling by putting crushed ice up against him without success. Finally, the charge nurse just called the DC Fire and EMS to get assistance with the heavy rescue squad to cut through the plate. We took the guy into the psych room, closed the door, and proceeded to cut it off. It being the weight, not his manhood. The entire time having to keep applying more ice to the plate so that it wouldn't become hot enough to cauterize his groin. The other patients really didn't appreciate hearing a buzzsaw, screaming, and seeing all of the ER staff giggling. Of course, the poor guy also had to deal with the constant stream of doctors, nurses, and techs having to go in there to check on something and see what was going on. I think this guy misunderstood how to get swole. My stepdad is an ER doctor in the only hospital in the city I was raised in. There was no place else to go when the hookup swing my idiot boyfriend hung on the drywall ceiling came crashing down and broke my tailbone. He was also there 6 months later when the same idiot boyfriend let go of my hips as I was visiting this town called Pound and was sent over the edge of a bed and headfirst into a desk. Sorry, Dad. Either this couple is really clumsy or they have an injury kink. We get inmates at my hospital because they're right down the road. They like to inflict injuries upon themselves to get out and spend a day here. The best from the inmates was a guy stuck a razor blade up his urethra, then proceeded to shove it up further with the pen. The pen put a hole in his urethra, and of course the razor shredded it. I think I'm gonna throw up after hearing that story. So I have a patient who came in due to a rash on his pee-pee. When asking about what caused the rash, he states, "I had a really rough hookup." Like really rough. I just nod my head and inform the doctor. We both give each other a what the freak look, and she proceeds to speak with the patient. The patient told her the true reason why he has the rash, and it was because he dry humped his girlfriend so roughly that he basically gave himself carpet burn on his pee-pee from his pants. No one ever talks about the dangers of the dry hump. Had this poor girl come into the ER a few weeks ago. Simple hookup went wrong case, and she was basically bleeding from her hoo-ha. They think she had some weak arteries down there and one must have just ruptured. Full disclosure, this happened to me. I noticed a small amount of bleeding immediately after. Later I noticed more, about the amount of menstruation. I laid a towel down and decided to go to bed. I felt a rush of fluid and made it to the bathroom before feeling faint and hitting the floor. I was able to call an ambulance from the floor. In the ambulance they said my face lips were blue from the loss of blood. One quick emergency surgery later and I was all stitched up and on my way home. Apparently I have weak arteries, which started as a small tear, broke open. So way back in medical school, all of us had to do 2 months rotation in an OBGYN. This rotation was split up into a few weeks of labor ward, a couple weeks of gynecologic surgery, and a couple weeks of OBGYN ER. Our major county hospital had a small, separate ER just for pregnant women and those with purely gynecological complaints, to relieve some pressure off the medical and surgical ERs. So I'm sitting in the OBGYN ER with the residents one night, and about 2 a.m. we get an ambulance ambulance crew bringing in a youngish woman who is absolutely howling in pain, and tell me to get a quick report from the EMTs, who had already talked to both the woman and her boyfriend, who they said would not be coming to the ER because he was busy talking to the police. Per the EMTs, the woman and her boyfriend had just been at her house hooking up. They had just finished their business and, as folks are meant to do, decided to light up a certain type of pipe and share it while they were unclothed on their couch. The boyfriend apparently went out to their car to grab something and inadvertently bumped the headlight switch. This caused the lights to flash, which the woman apparently interpreted as "the cops are coming" for some reason, and shoved the lit pipe into her hoo-ha. Obviously, this was excruciatingly painful, causing her to tense up and start frailing trying to get it out, which then caused parts of it to shatter, so now she had hot broken glass in her baby maker. I don't have a hoo-ha personally, but that story made my imaginary hoo-ha hurt. I'm a firefighter / paramedic. Broken pee-pee, bent at a right angle about halfway. It's the second time he had it. His wife was on top and got carried away. It looked like they sacrificed a chicken on the bed. Not my call, but a paramedic was called to a 20-something male living in a ski resort town having groin pains. Arrived to find his pee-pee completely necrotic. His buddies had bet him that he couldn't stick it in a snowman for an hour. Perfect example of winning the battle, but losing the war. 26-year-old decided to be circumcised. His doctor told him not to hook up. He didn't listen. It peeled like a banana. Yep, that does it. I've had enough internet for the day after reading this.
Law enforcers, have you ever come across a crime so stupid or ridiculous that you just let it slip? Not the US, to clarify for everyone asking. This was in South Africa in the early 90s. When I was in high school, the rugby team found out I had learned how to drive but not yet received my license. They all knew I did not drink, so one of them had the genius idea of inviting me to parties as the designated driver. We'd lost a popular kid to a drunken accident a few months earlier, so it was actually a good idea. It was a great arrangement, lots of parties, lots of girls, and all I had to do was get them home in one piece afterwards. It went great for a few weeks, until one night. The police had heard there was a big party on a farm outside of town and decided to set up a roadblock. So I come driving up to flashing lights, car filled with 5 big drunk guys, including one passed out with his head out of the window, and little scrawny me barely able to look over the steering wheel, and the inside of the car smells like a brewery. The officer takes one look at the car and asks me to step out. Have you been drinking? No, officer, I don't drink. Has me take a breathalyzer. 0. Looks at me. Can I see your driver's license? Sorry, officer, I don't have one yet. I'm getting it next week. And I point back toward the car, but they have theirs. He looked at me, flipped his little book closed, and said, just take them home. Next time I see you, you'd better have your license. Under the circumstances, this sounds like a pretty reasonable officer. Like, better the guy who's gonna get his license next week and sober be driving now than one of these guys be trying to. I overheard this one last night as I was sitting near 2 Indiana cops at Panda Express. So this lady had a warrant for an unpaid ticket and missed court date. I bring her in and it turns out that her address is wrong and she never got the court summons. The original ticket was for possession of a black bass under 14 inches, and since she admits the court summons, it was now on her record. So if she goes to apply for a job and they inevitably ask her, do you have any criminal history, she's obligated to say yes. Now imagine if the employer asks, why? Because I caught a small fish. Maybe I'm dumb, but I am confused.
I was at a convenience store buying beer while 2 cops were milling around looking at soft drinks and snacks. One employee was working the register while another one was throwing out old donuts. One of the cops looked over at her and said,
You can't do that in front of the police.
It was funny because he sounded upset with her when he said it.
Always nice when people have a good sense of humor.
My ex-fiancé was a cop for a redneck town where the people didn't have much money. He was called to the grocery store where a little girl about 9 was being detained in the manager's office for stealing a box of tampons. He said she had tears and snot everywhere and her pants had obvious bloodstains all over the front. My ex then bought the box she was trying to steal along with 3 more boxes, some food and milk. He then drove her home to a trailer that was falling apart. It wasn't so much the crime that was ridiculous, but more the manager's reaction. I guess when my ex came in, the manager was just screaming at this terrified 9-year-old.
That's a nice story, a fine story, a good story. But my question is, what did you do to drive away such a good man? I kid, of course, I don't know the ins and outs of their relationship. I frequently, or did when I was in uniform, let impaired care or control slide. If I found someone sleeping in the back seat of their parked car after drinking, it demonstrated to me a decision to not drink and drive. I'd often take keys or drive someone home, but arresting them just seemed wrong. Long as they're not obstructing traffic or in a really inconvenient place, I think that makes perfect sense. I was the lucky one once, not charged by a cop. In college, my friend had a massive house party. I woke up the next morning face down in a puddle of drool in the bed of my truck. Went inside and found out the cops had busted the party and everyone got underage tickets. Over 30 people, except for me. Not sure if they took pity on me or never saw me, but they had my truck boxed in with squad cars. The lines on my face from the rubs on my bedliner took 2 days to go away. Well, aren't you a lucky boy? Not a police officer, but I witnessed it happen. I got a phone call from a police officer using my buddy's phone. Apparently, my buddy, a jackass, got so drunk he fell out of his car in the drive-thru lane at Taco Cabana. The cop told me I had 15 minutes to get there and pick up my friend. I made it in time and the officer helped me throw my friend in the bed of my truck. He told me to take my friend home and when he woke up, tell him he was a goddamn idiot. The police officer was a homicide detective in the major city in which we lived, and he said he had real crimes to solve and to stop wasting his time.
You better take your drunk little jackass friend home. I got donuts to eat, coffee to drink, and murders to solve.
A long time ago in a life far removed from my own, I had a nasty dope addiction. I cleaned up my life and had been clean for 3 years. My friend had been learning to become a tattoo artist and asked me if I wanted one. To repay his kindness, I picked up a 30-pack and some tequila. After about 3 hours of him digging in with the gun and most of the beers and booze gone, we came up with the plan. We were going to go to the city and score some dope. Didn't take long and we accomplished just that. We found a nice, quiet, dimly lit parking lot to pull in and get to getting high. We break out the gear and started. He got his ready faster and got it done. I was out of practice and fumbled around a bit. Just then, someone knocked on the window. It's the cops. We rolled down the window and they asked if we knew where we were. Before we can say anything, the cop said, "This is the fucking police station parking lot. Are you frickin' thick?" They took the dope and sent us on our way, and I now have 13 years clean thanks to that cop. You know, in times like that, I can't help but think that well, if you're that stupid or just unaware of your environment, then yeah, you deserve to be arrested. But in this case, I guess things worked out. There was this guy where I used to live who would walk around smiling strangely and approach people trying to shake their hand. As soon as he got a hold of their hand, he would try to kiss them. A friend of mine naively accepted his handshake and literally bent over backward trying to avoid the kiss. A couple of churches in the area had this thing at the end of their service where everyone would shake hands so this guy would show up to reap the harvest. Cops were called on him a few times, but to my knowledge, they never arrested him, but just drove him far away from the area and dropped him off and made him walk all the way back. I'm just picturing that interaction as, "Oh, well, nice to make your acquaintance, old chap. What are you doing?" Brother-in-law is a cop. We'll call him Jack. He used to ride a bike in downtown Toronto during his first 2 years. Canadian cops ride in bikes and wear tight shorts during summer, by the way. So he was on a side street when he spotted a car driving like 10 kilometers an hour and every 5 seconds stopping suddenly like someone hitting their brakes hard and starting again. So he follows the car going around in a 4-block circle wondering, what the hell? He decided to check if maybe something is wrong with the driver and needed help. He gets close to the car and he hears the driver, which was male, groaning. He immediately thought the driver was having a health issue. He rides up to the driver's window and puts his hand on the car and at the same time asking, "Sir, are you all right?" Driver slams his brakes and Jack sees a female lifting her head off his lap and hastily, the driver covering his crotch. He tried so hard not to burst out laughing. Driver was so embarrassed when Jack asked for license and registration. He said it was also obvious the woman wasn't a hooker because of her looks and the red face of shame. So the driver croaks up "Is there something wrong, officer?" while my brother Jack was looking at his license. Jack told the driver that he was driving too slow and he seemed to be in distress and next time he would be better off trying not to have engaged in a sexual manner while behind the wheel. He said all that in a very stern voice while looking at the guy straight in the eyes. He didn't give him a ticket or arrest him. When he returned back to the police station, he relayed the whole story to his buddies. They call him Spoilsport Jack now. It might sound a bit juvenile to say, but I love earning nicknames in the workplace. My time to shine. Now, I was the lawbreaker in this case, but the cop was so utterly dumbfounded and amused that he just let us go. Let me tell you the story of the 12-person Prius. It was around 10 p.m. on a Friday night and was my first day in college. It was freshman orientation day during the summer, and we got to stay in a dorm for the night. While my group was getting to know each other, we decided that we should find something fun to do. However, being in a small town, our options were limited. Thus, we decided upon visiting the glorious Walmart in town, about the most fun place to go. Our plans were thwarted, though, when we discovered that we were all dropped off by our parents and didn't have a car. We sure as hell weren't going to walk 8 miles, and we didn't know what to do. But then, the twins piped up. The identical twin sisters apparently didn't come with their parents and instead borrowed their parents' Toyota Prius for the weekend. Great! So, with a car ready to go, we start for the parking lot, but then somebody did a head count and mentioned to the group that we have 12 people. Our hearts sank. How could we bring 12 people to Walmart with a Prius? One person suggested taking 2 trips. One person said maybe we shouldn't go. But then somebody suggested that we all squeeze in. It was brilliant. And after thinking about it, 100% feasible. So we got to work. 2 people in the passenger seat, 1 driving, 7 in the rear seat, and 2 in the trunk. It was a masterpiece. Thus, the journey began. Nearly touching the ground and easily bottoming out the suspension, we set forth for Walmart. We got about half a mile from campus before we were pulled over. The cop was speechless as he counted as each person exited the car. Sergeant Casper, his name was. Casper was the friendly cop. He could barely contain his laughter. He simply told us that he didn't want us getting hurt, that we should walk back to campus, and that he was impressed that we fit that many people in the car. We sat there and chatted for about 20 minutes and left, never to fit in the Prius again. Casper, the friendly cop, the friendliest cop you know. My wife got pulled over one night while I was riding in the passenger seat. She was driving my car and it didn't have automatic headlights and she forgot to flip the switch. The cop walks up and gets both our licenses, checks them and walks back. He issues my wife a warning, then gives me a ticket for presenting an expired license to an officer. He tells me it's the same as presenting a fictitious license to an LEO, and it's a $250 fine. I was confused because I had just renewed my license a year earlier, but before I could ask, he had ran back to his cruiser and drove off. Sure enough, he wrote down my license issue date as the expiration date. So I go to court to fight it, take a day off work, wait around at the courthouse for 3 hours. Finally, my case gets cancelled and I talk to an AITA. He says if my license is current now, then I'm off with just court costs. I explain the mistake the officer made. His eyes glaze over and says, if we go to the judge, it's gonna be the full line. I explain again and he says, fine, we will go to the judge. Another hour later, the judge calls the case and I explain it again. He asks to see the citation and the ticket. I present them. He looks at it and his face kind of squishes up in a what the hell look. His exact words were, who is the dumb butt cop wasting my time? Charges dismissed. For those who don't know, I say for those who don't know, the actual quote from the judge are words that I am not at liberty to say. I once got pulled over for speeding 15 over. I had just gotten Taco Bell, and when he asked me why I was going so fast, I said that I'm just really excited to eat my Taco Bell. He laughed, gave me my license back, and let me go, saying that was the funniest excuse he had heard all day. I think that's as valid a reason as any to let someone go on a speeding ticket. I was on foot patrol in central London about 2 in the morning. I turned a corner and saw a group of very drunk ex-public, privately schooled for you colonials, schoolboys staggering along the road with a collection of the usual ubiquitous parking cones. They had about 10 cones between the 5 of them. I stood there for about 5 minutes, walking this lot sodding about, when one of them spotted me. He then made an attempt to warn his friends that he had spotted me, but they were so drunk they didn't take any notice. He then gathered as many cones off of his friends that he could carry, staggered up to me and said, Officer, I would like to hand these over to you as I think they are lost property. I burst out laughing and walked away. Typical, such a typical drunk juvenile act to do in England. I was young and went out to buy some condoms at a store. I spent a long time standing there trying to figure out what to get. Finally grab a box, then wander around the store working up the nerve to actually purchase it. I chicken out, put them on some random shelf, then go walk out of the store. As I get to the door, some lady in her 40s comes running up to me and in a slightly out-of-breath voice demands I hand over the condoms. I'm shocked and answer, wide-eyed, that I don't have them. She doesn't believe me, so I sheepishly lead her to where I ditched them. As I leave, a again, I realized just buying them would have been a lot less stressful. My advice for buying condoms is just slam the pack down and do not break eye contact no matter what. They'll respect you because you're practicing safe sex. I was hammered one day walking home with a bunch of my friends. I see a trash can and running dropkick it. Of course, it sends trash everywhere, and all I hear on a PA is, "Pick it up." Cop there the whole time, never got out of the car. I picked up the trash can and put all the trash back and went on my way. Cool cop. Give a hoot, don't pollute. When I was in high school, my buddy and I left during lunch to go get our biology cat that he'd left at home. A biology cat is one that's being dissected. It was all splayed out and opened up on a dissection tray, essentially a baking sheet filled with wax so you could stick pins in it. We took off in another friend's car, a Beetle with no muffler and flat tires, and screaming to Mac's house about a mile away in a little lower middle-class neighborhood. Got the cat, put it on the back seat, and threw a dish towel over it because, well, it's just creepy. As I'm backing out the driveway, Mac tells me to be cool. There's a cop down at the intersection. We putter down the street and stop at the stop sign, and suddenly we're surrounded. Plainclothes cops come up and block us behind. Two standard cop cars come from each side of the intersection and block us in front. A cop gets out and yells at us to turn off the car and step out. We're freaked because we know that the car has all kinds of illegal substances hidden away in the glove box behind the dash, under the seat. We also have no idea why driving fast and loud in this neighborhood warranted such a massive response. We get out, hands on the hood. Officer starts to search the car. We tell him about the biology cat and point to the back seat. He lifts the dish towel up, looks at us, and stops searching the car. Everyone backs off and he tells us to get back to school, and if I wasn't busy right now, I'd haul you in for speeding in a residential neighborhood. Get your muffler fixed. After school, we found out that someone had been murdered in the neighborhood earlier that morning. 2 male suspects seen leaving the area. Our biology teacher laughed his butt off. Never so grateful for a murder in my life. I understand the relief, but I certainly wouldn't say it like that. Not a cop, but I was driving to North Carolina. It was supposed to be my brother and I driving, but he went out the night previous and got hammered, thinking I'd drive the first leg, then he'd finish it out. Well, he miscalculated how hungover he was and was useless the entire way. This was a 12-hour drive, but when we finally got there, my brother starts complaining at me. He needs to use the bathroom. We were in the city at this point during rush hour, so I was stuck in the left lane among a great deal of traffic. There was a left turn that could get me to a Wendy's, so I jumped into the lane. The green turn arrow became yellow, so I started slowing down. My parents and brother all scream some variation of, "Just frickin' go!" So I do it, and sure enough, I see the lights go on, pull into the Wendy's parking lot and turn off the car. A large woman gets out of a cop car. I swear she is straight from a buddy cop movie as the loud-mouthed comic relief, permed hair and all. She walks up and looks totally serious. My brother is in the backseat, hungover, pale and sweating. He leans forward and blurts out, "Can I please go inside while you do this? I'm about to poo my pants." Her serious tone just completely drops and she starts laughing her butt off. "Of course, honey, you can go." He jumps out and runs into the building doing the funniest butt clench I've ever seen. She ends up giving me a warning because she saw me hit the brakes, then heard everyone screaming at me. She warned everyone to not distract the driver and told me to ignore everyone else, which I know I should have done. So everything worked out well, and my brother ends up coming out with Frosties for the family because they wouldn't let him use the bathroom without buying anything. I would have just immediately forgiven them once they brought me the Frosty. If it's ice cream, a ice lolly, a slush puppy of some kind, if it's a frozen treat and you're trying to curry favor with me, well, you've got it, baby, you've got it. When I was in college, I woke up one morning to knocking on my door. I sleep naked, so just grabbed what was on my floor. It was a tank top and a frilly pink skirt. I opened the door to see a cop. At this point, I am experiencing the absolute worst hangover in the world and very possibly still partially drunk. He tells me that the landlord is paving the back parking lot and I need to move my car. I look at him and tell him there is no way I can drive it this time and say if they need to move it, they might want to do it themselves. Meanwhile, he is clearly holding back some laughter. He agrees to move my car for me and bring back my keys. I told him to wait a minute while I get them. Still trying to contain his laughter, he says, "Ma'am, they were actually in your door. I'm completely mortified and feel like death now." He returns 5 to 10 minutes later and tells me he moved it to the other section of the lot. I go back to sleep and a few hours later leave to go to class. Well, the car car is absolutely nowhere in sight. I find a cop car parked not too far away and tell him what happened. He called in to the cop and it turns out the landlord had it towed. The first cop shows back up, apologizes, and offers to take me to the tow lot to get the car. On the way there, he decides to show off a little and is speeding through red lights and across town. It was pretty thrilling. The PD ended up paying for my towing fee. I mentioned the pink skirt because while we were on our way to the tow yard, he told me that he was holding back his laughter because the last thing he expected to see was a hungover girl wearing a tutu at 8 a.m. Apparently, that's what it looked like to him. And after seeing the keys in the door and what I had on, he envisioned the hangover type evening for me. This does not really fit the question of the post, but there are a lot of stories here of good guy cops helping out idiots in need and thought it was in a way relevant. I mean, that's precisely why I've been enjoying these stories quite a lot. I once woke up at the back door of a Chicago home, inside their 8-foot fenced and secured yard. I was awoken by 8 cops yelling at me and shining their lights on me, telling me to exit the yard and come to them. There was no way to get out of the yard and the homeowner had to come take a lock off the gate to let me out. I was asked where my shoes were, where I lived, how I got there, and what the hell was going on. I explained I went to bed on my friend's couch around 10. Inside my pockets, they found a giant glass pipe and an even bigger piece of devil's lettuce cola bud. After some serious what the hell looks and giggles from the greatest cops in the world, I found myself being given a ride 2 blocks away to my friend's house. I apologized for being a sleepwalking idiot and for the illegal substances, which I then realized was still in my pocket thanks to some pretty awesome Chicago cops. They do sound like some pretty understanding and cool cops. But for real, how the hell did you sleepwalk 2 blocks away? I mean, the most I've ever seen someone sleepwalk is like 5 feet and then pee on a television set.
When I was 18, I got pulled over. Policeman asks, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I say, "Yes, because I did an illegal U-turn." He says, "No, because you ran a stop sign." He was so amused by my stupidity that he let me go.
Some of these policemen sound extremely easy to please. My friends and I were driving home one Saturday night and spotted a car that looked like it had veered off the main drag and up against a building. We approached the car and tried to see if the driver was okay, but he was unresponsive, so we called 911 and the police showed up. They roused him and started asking him questions such as, did he have ID? No. What was his name? He didn't know. What was his address? He wasn't sure. The more he talked, the dumber and more stoned he sounded. They asked him if he lived in Portland, the city where this was occurring. He replied, "Portland?" Like he had never heard of the place. They then asked if he was from Beaverton, Vancouver, Gresham, Oregon City, Hillsborough, etc. Each time he responded as if he never heard of any of the cities mentioned. The cops paused as if they had run out of questions to ask, so I thought I might be able to help. I asked the driver if he lived in Oregon. He stonily replied, "Where's that?" I informed him it was on the west coast of the USA between Washington and California. He asked, "USA? What's that?" I replied that it's the main country in North America. "North America?" he says with more confusion. "Yes," I tell him. "North America is one of the continents of planet Earth. Are you familiar with planet Earth?" At this point, both officers are giggling and no longer asking any questions, deferring to my interrogation. The driver looked up in the sky for a few seconds, then returned his glassy gaze to me. "Earth?" he asked. I replied that Earth is the 3rd planet in this planetary system around the star called Sol. "Where's that?" he wanted to know. I replied that Sol was located in the spiral arms of the Milky Way galaxy. Perhaps he was from somewhere in the Milky Way galaxy. That did not seem to ring a bell with him. I asked, "What about the Andromeda galaxy? Might you be from there?" He got a bit excited and indicated that the Andromeda galaxy sounded quite familiar. I turned to the officers and informed them, "He's from the Andromeda galaxy." They were laughing to the point where there were tears streaming from their eyes. I turned back to the driver and asked, "Are you here for the weekend or just passing through?" He hadn't decided yet. I was very interested in how he was able to get his VW bug from galaxy to galaxy, but he wasn't willing or able to share that technology with me. A shame. The police officers give him a ride back to the local detox center where I'm sure he was able to meet some fellow traveler and share good times. Whatever that boy was smoking, it pretty near gave him amnesia. That is crazy. Doesn't even know what galaxy he's from.
Men of Reddit, what would be your response to a guy who suddenly starts flirting with your girl? Had a guy buy our margaritas when my girlfriend ordered them for us at the counter. I thanked him from across the restaurant. Free margaritas taste better. My friend ordered a girl's drink at the bar once. Right after the bartender handed it to her, her boyfriend walks over. So what does my friend do? He orders a drink for the boyfriend too. 5 minutes later, I look over and all three of them are sitting next to each other, best freaking friends. I took some notes from that guy. He didn't buy her a drink expecting something from her. He just wanted to make her happy. And when he found out that she had a boyfriend, he wanted to make him happy too. And people like him because of that. I bought a birthday party, girl celebrating her 30th, and I got a nasty look from them. One of them came up to me and threw the drink in my face, saying, "We're not gonna sleep with you over a drink." Bouncer kicked them out after the bartender clarified that I didn't say a word and was being nice. Yes, Bouncer assumed I was harassing them at first. The good news is I got free drinks for the rest of the night. Am I the only one who thinks that I have a boyfriend or assuming all men want you is very childish? My wife had a guy offer to buy her drinks, and when he said that she was married, he said something to the effect of, "Then let me buy the lucky man his drink instead." Which I thought was a great way to handle it. Get you a bar friend most of the time since the guy gets a free drink, and if he's a jealous or protective type, he will respond better because someone didn't end up buying his girl a drink. Went out with another couple, walking through the area filled with bars. We hear some guys catcalling our lady friend. Something along the lines of, "Yo, you're so hot, I would give it to you." And her boyfriend replies back, "And nothing for me?" This is the way I wish I would handle this situation, but my brain would probably be like, "What did he say? I can't hear you because it's so loud in here." I looked at the dude and said, "Sorry dude, you're not my sister's type." And then I immediately kissed my wife. We were both blonde, so people think we were related all the time. Gosh, I have to have my husband do this sometime. We used to work together and people would come in all the time asking if we were brother and sister. I'd step in and say something, not because I feel like I need to or because my wife can't handle herself, but because I know her and she likes the feeling of being looked after. I know this because she told me. That's very sweet. Just because you stand strong doesn't mean that you should always have to. It's good to know that you have backup whether it's your friends or your husband. I once let my girlfriend handle a situation like that on her own. And the thing I learned in the process is that it takes a woman a lot more work to deter an aggressive guy. As soon as I stepped in, Handsy McNoBoundaries apologized to me. Not the stranger whose butt he touched and complimented. She could absolutely handle the situation on her own, and my first impulse was not to treat her like a possession some other guy was touching. But on some levels, it does feel like I'm condoning the behavior. This is very true. I was out with my ex one night walking my dogs. My ex got sidetracked and stopped to take some photos of a lizard basking on the side of the road. Not wanting my dogs to stress or spook the lizard, I told him that I was going to keep walking ahead. He said that he would catch up with me and he was about a half a block behind me. I went around the corner and two men saw and started aggressively catcalling me, making comments on my skin, body, and following me. I told them to leave me alone and I wasn't interested. They didn't care and kept at it. They completely ignored my discomfort and were starting to actually frighten me. My ex came around the corner, saw the two guys were way too close to my personal space, and asked what was going on. They immediately apologized to him and backed off, not the woman that they were actually harassing and scaring just seconds ago. They apologized to him. It's genuinely heartbreaking how much faster and easier it can be for a man to get another man to leave a woman alone, than for the same woman to get that man to leave her alone. It's worrying to me how common that can be. It is pretty sad that women do have to deal with this type of stuff on a daily basis. Nothing. She is beautiful and I get it. When she shoots them down and they keep trying is when I step in because it's harassment at that point, and that's a problem. Exactly. I had a customer invite my wife on a helicopter ride the other day, totally trying to chat her up. When he asked what she did there, she pointed at me and said, "I'm just hanging out. I'm married to him." After that, you could see him deflate like a balloon. Nothing. My wife just says, "Shh, watch this." Ask him if he's down for a three-way and make him uncomfortable. That seems dangerous if you're not actually down for a three-way. Lots of dudes out there would be perfectly happy to make a wobbly H with you and your lady. Well, that's when you tell him that he goes in the middle. I have to agree with that second comment. It is definitely a dangerous game of chicken. Sharing a lady with another man isn't my cup of tea, but I know plenty of dudes that would have absolutely no problem with it. It's like free food to them. My wife is gorgeous in my eyes, but she is incredibly hard on herself. After kids, antidepressants, and being 20 years older than when we first started dating, she doesn't always see that she's the most beautiful person to me. So when someone else starts talking to her and wants to get in her pants, I just tell her I told you so. I pinch his butt and say we're down, but he bottoms, no exceptions. She's a grown-up, she can respond to his flirting herself. I don't need to jump in and do the whole back off buddy thing. my girlfriend who is 40, is often pretty useless in handling those situations, giving out unintentional yes signals, further aggravating the situation. She's openly and immediately accepting of compliments in general, but also somewhat blind to more subtle flirtation. So someone flirting with her can take her positive response to a compliment as a green light. It's like she can't distinguish between the friendly and flirtatious "you look hot," and acts if they're all friendly compliments. If someone touches her, she can get uncomfortable and act like it's not happening, possibly post-trauma or fight or flight freeze response, which can come off as being okay with that kind of contact. Someone aggressively tries to kiss her, she'll tend to turn her face away and laugh or giggle, but that doesn't give a clear no response, so she can come off as just being coy. She's aware that she often has no sense that a situation has hookup intent or is headed in that direction if encouraged. And also talked a good bit about this with people. Usually it'll be when something happens out of nowhere. She'll talk to people about it over a week or two, trying to figure out what she missed. She'll digest their opinions and advice on what to look for and how to handle such situations in the future. But it just becomes a story that will sometimes pop up in conversation. I don't think she's improved in spotting flirtation or nipping it in the bud with a clear no sign. And her way of handling those situations for the past decade or so has been to ask people around her, including me, to watch out for her when she's in an environment where flirtation is likely. To answer the OP's question, my job is to give a clear no sign or just remove her from the situation. I'm not sure how her friends handle it because I'm not always around, but I do know of one situation where they did nothing, but I imagine it's because they thought, she's an adult, she can make her own decisions, much like what you said, and one would generally assume until they know better. So there are people who need someone to keep an eye out for them and intervene before things get aggressive, as they have on more than one occasion for my GF. This was a great follow-up comment. I sometimes get annoyed with the "she's a big girl" comments because it assumes that women can easily handle or get out of any situation that is presented in front of them. If he's not making her uncomfortable, I don't care. She's coming home with me, our dog is at home, and she really likes him. Flirt with her too. It's a competition now. I was at a house party and my girlfriend at the time was getting hit on by a couple of guys. I walked up to her like I didn't know her and told her how good looking she was and that I wanted to kiss her. I kissed her and she wrapped her arms around me. When we stopped, I told her that I would talk to her later and just walked away. As I did, the guys hitting on her just looked at me in awe. I tell him good luck and watch her roast him. My GF is a bartender, so she's witty AF. I love it when people try hitting on her and she just shoots them down hard. Pure comedic gold. I'm glad I never did that. That cruel insult when someone isn't being offensive, but is too inexperienced to have game, yet is just trying to get someone to like them, will be remembered for a lifetime. I agree with that last comment. Men who don't have game will definitely remember every rejection they get. If a guy is being a complete douche though, feel free to knock him down a peg. If I didn't trust her, she wouldn't be my girl. Some guy giving her a confidence boost is fine with me. According to my girl, I wouldn't even be aware of flirting because I can't take a hint even if it's right in front of my face. I'd probably join the chat, then casually ask my wife what time we told the kids we'd be home. This happened to me not too long ago. My wife is nice and likes to chat people up when she's drinking. Naturally, a lot of guys think that means she's into them. We were at a concert, and I guess the guy assumed that since she talked to him, that she and I were just friends. They only spoke once or twice, but she was dancing and drinking and he had just hung around. After the concert, he came up and started in. By then, I had enough of him checking her out, so I pulled the old, "let's get out of here, I'm sure the babysitter is ready to go home," and the guy just vanished like a puff of smoke. We were both wearing our wedding rings. I would enjoy the show, or possibly be busy hitting on his wife. Did I mention that we're swingers? Swingers are always out here needing to make themselves known to the world. If she's taken by another man by simply talking or flirting, is she really my girl in the first place? I might laugh if it was particularly bold or egregious right in front of my face or something, but I never intervene unless she asks me to. She's an adult and she can decide for herself if she wants to entertain a conversation. Also, selfishly, I like to see if I can get a free drink out of it if it's occurring at the bar. My best friend is naturally drop-dead gorgeous. One night we went out and had quite a few drinks at a tap house nearby, and when we got back, I mentioned to her husband that literally every head in the room turned when she walked in, and that the bartender seemed to blush every time he talked to her. It was more for her benefit, because she doesn't realize how beautiful she is. He got pissed, like what the freak? You marry a beautiful woman and you're mad when people notice her? Makes no sense. Shake my head. Dude missed a chance to hype up his wife. What's even worse, she felt guilty for it. He's actually a great husband and father. I honestly don't think he realizes what a jerk he is when he comes up with that stuff. Man, so many guys want to date a 10, but they don't want the attention that comes with it. My wife constantly gets hit on. I don't care if men hit on her. I trust her completely and have since the start. She has never given me a reason not to trust her. When we used to go out to bars together, she would get hit on. Guys would offer to buy her drinks. She would always tell them my drink of choice. After she got the drinks, she would thank them and walk away and hand me the drink. If people don't respect her boundaries, that's when I step in. We never really had any bad experiences with men hitting on her. Normally, once they see her with me, they basically just walk away. It depends on the situation. Most of the time, I think, good luck, man. Hope she doesn't embarrass you. I know she's coming home with me at the end of the day. If the guy is obviously creepy or making her uncomfortable, I typically step in and make sure he gets the point. I'm not a small guy, so they usually get the idea. I don't really care for confrontation or violence, but with that said, I won't tolerate someone harassing my wife or making her feel uncomfortable. It gets a little awkward when you're a small guy. I'm not pint-sized, but I'm 5'7" and about 165 to 170. I'm not intimidating to most men. Had 2 offensive line-looking dudes catcalling my fiance in a bar a few years ago. She just ignored them for the first 2 times. Biggest issue was that they were out with her dad. I had to walk over and explain the situation to the 2 gentlemen and let them know that I wasn't looking for a fight, but I wasn't going to allow it to continue. Luckily, I knew the entire staff at the bar, and the bartender came over to ask if everything was good. I told him, in pretty good Spanish, that I was fine, and if I needed help, I would let him know. I'm super white, but these 2 dudes didn't understand a word of what I said. Definitely helped that the bartender went back to the kitchen for a few minutes afterwards. Yeah, not looking intimidating can be a problem. I'm average size-wise. I was once in a club with my girlfriend, and some guys were harassing her and her friends. Now, I wasn't really in a mood to deal with it, but when one of them tried to touch them, I immediately called them out. They were a bit buff and thought that they would win the fight. Bit of background, I've been doing martial arts since I was 4, and not some recreational stuff, but with actual fighting. I actually met my girlfriend there. I'm usually a pretty mellow guy, but that day wasn't great to begin with. She knew I wasn't in a good mood, and when she noticed, she immediately stood behind me and grabbed my pants and belt from behind. It was pretty effective. If push came to shove, she wouldn't have held me back, but I felt it and that was enough. It was a pretty big commotion, and one of them even tried to push me, but that's when security showed up and threw them out. I think if I would have been bigger, they would have just left earlier, but on the plus side, they were thrown out and couldn't continue harassing other girls. This is one of the main reasons I don't like clubs or being at bars too much. I'm not a drinker myself, so seeing a bunch of dudes being douchey or gross towards women isn't a fun time. If he isn't physically touching her, I would see what her reaction is. If she reciprocates, then I would leave because I just dodged a bullet. If she shoots him down, I make my presence known to prevent any potential negative reaction from the guy towards her. I challenge him to a unicycle cage match. Younger me would be confrontational. Mid-30s me would be curious to see how it goes, and if by some surprise she's into it, then she just revealed something about her and us that I really needed to know anyways. That is a statement to live by. Why would I have to respond to somebody flirting with my girl? I trust my girl. That's why she's my girl. She's an adult and more than capable of handling this sort of situation. Now, if it became too much or he was stalking or abusive or anything over the top, then you have to be dealt with. But if there's just some guy flirting with my woman, great. It validates that I'm with a very attractive, interesting woman that other people find the same. She's a big girl and I trust her. I hope you know what you're getting into, my guy. I'm telling you as a friendly warning. I dated a Marine. I was a Navy corpsman. While she liked knowing I had her back, she also liked standing up and showing guys how tall she really was without heels. Did I mention that she was a Marine? I gotta admit, seeing 3/4 of the men brush off the warning from a short Asian guy, only to find out my warning was valid, their eyes went from her bust to her overtowering them. Oh, by the way, she's 6 foot. I forgot to mention that. I didn't have to worry about her being taken. She had a thing for short Asian men. 3/4 of the men that hit on her were all macho white men. So she got off on showing them her true height. Then she would walk over to me, wrap her arms around me, evidently marking her territory, like a dragon claiming her prince, with a dangerous look in her eye. That got me off. Hey now, it's fun climbing trees. I just keep a close eye on the situation. My wife can be really nervous, but also a bit fiery, and if I see her starting to get uncomfortable or the guy becoming too much, then I'll step in. Other than that, I don't mind. It just proves what I already know. My wife is a beautiful woman. I like to sit back and enjoy the show. My wife is completely oblivious to this stuff, and then later is mortified when I point out that she was totally being flirted with. It's always a good time. I've seen a few guys try it and just feel bad for them. She generally shoves her huge ring in their face and yells at them. Once we were out with some friends and some guy tried to grab her waist. She yelled and slapped his drink right into his face. Most guys would get worked up and defend their girl. I just find it a blast to watch her go off on creepy dudes and put them in their place. She's the best and I love her to freaking death. Cheers to 9 years, my love. Nothing. It's the highest compliment to me when guys hit on my wife at a bar. I'm a 6 and my wife is an honest 8, so it really speaks to my charm if you ask me. Bonus if her drinks are on their tab. Lady of Reddit here. My fiance is a DJ at a bar that I used to work at, so I would go and hang out with him and all my old friends that still work there. I ended up sitting by myself near his DJ set and guys would come up to my table constantly. When they would ask where my boyfriend was, I would point to my fiance and give them the bro nod. They usually got the point from there. There was this one time when I was like 7 months pregnant and sitting at the high top. This kid couldn't have been more than 19. Comes up and asks me why I'm all alone and looking so sad. First off, rude, and not a great pickup line. So I smile, stand up, and turn to the side to show him my belly and say, "I'm not alone, silly." He looks dumbfounded and walks away without another word. Good times. The "so sad" is such a bad pickup line, but I can totally see my cringe younger self saying that. If you get worried because your partner gets flirted with, then either you have trust issues or your partner's the wrong partner. Because with the right one, you just trust them. And the amount of people on social media with replies with something like, "Well, good luck with that, buddy boy. You're getting your girl stolen," is exactly the reason why you can't find a good partner. They aren't able to judge a good person, trust them, or create a healthy relationship. And sometimes stuff will happen, but why do I get the feeling if you were able to create a healthy relationship, it would happen way less? Honestly, first, I'd probably need to let her know she was being hit on. She is not good at recognizing when a dude is into her, by her own admission. So us being us, I would probably low-key send her this exact text. "You know that dude is trying to hit on you, right? Let's make him think we're serial killers." At this point, we would start totally playing into his advances, but occasionally saying things like, "We can have guests over, right? Everything's sharpened." Or, "I can fit 15 people in my van if they're folded right and not too stiff yet." Or something like, "How long do you think you can hold your breath?" You know, like, against your will. We don't get out much. My girlfriend is a little out of my league. Not to say that I don't clean up nice, but she is a little out of my league. Apparently this was noticed by a guy at a party. He came up to my girlfriend and myself, and since my girlfriend was in the middle of a conversation, he started talking to me. Soon, when my girlfriend was finishing her conversation, he says to me without much preface, "Hey, make me look good." Now, first of all, I have no idea exactly how he expected me to make him look good, but I asked him, "For this girl? This girl right here? My girlfriend? I mean, we could try, but I don't think she'll go for you." He turned pretty red, and without saying much else, he immediately turned around and left the group. I yelled out, "Where are you going? This isn't making you look good." My girlfriend loves when I tell that story. Is the flirting in person or via text, email, or social media? If it's in person, that can be pretty hot if you work it out right. If it's the other, then you gotta trust that they will do the right thing. Nothing other than how you respond is in your control. My wife and I don't wear rings, and a few weeks ago we were at the bar and a dude came right up to her and made his move. Gotta give the guy some props, really. She flirted back, cause that's okay for us, and he figured out soon enough that this wasn't his day. But it worked out for great fantasy talk that night, so thanks, buddy. This story reminded me of that episode of that 70s show when Fez gets used by a girl at the bar for a roleplay fantasy with her husband. First, I'd turn red with anger. Then I'd slowly stew and sweat until I had a plan formed. Next, I'd down a few shots of cheap whiskey, while my girl pestered me about what the freak was wrong with me, as I made no eye contact and said nothing, slowly gathering my rage into an irresistible force of righteous indignity. I've been here before. I said it to myself, and it never ended well. Before the night was out, one of us always regretted the choices we made that day, but so far, it hadn't been me. Some might say I'd been lucky. I'd say I was just brave. The kind of brave you get when you down a few shots of cheap whiskey. Real brave. So I step up to face my nemesis like a knight of old to defend the honor of my fair maiden by proudly and loudly stating, "Hey, you got a problem with me, bro?" Happened more than once cause my wife is a looker and she's got some assets. The moment I press them, they see my cauliflower ear and totally back off. Those dudes are scum deliberately. They try to make weak dudes look like pushovers. The one time I played punch the face, I became the bad guy and Chad became the poor victim. Couldn't believe people got upset at me. I'd pull my pants down and do the helicopter while screaming like a deranged penguin. That'll show 'em. There's always that one guy in the group that will do the helicopter to protect his girl. That's it for this video. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. It's linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching and we'll see you guys next time.